actually stopped some pucks in that game. And
I didn't think they played fine in the first period.
No, the first period they were slow. It was pretty obvious, but their goaltender kept them in it. And then the second period, you lose back-to-back-to-back faceoffs, and you can't get the puck out of the zone, and your goaltender lets a couple of get past them. But that was a game that you lose, you say, well, weird-ish happens in the NHL.
Flush it.
Let's focus on the next one.
Yeah.
The problem here is if you go out and lay another egg against Anaheim and another egg against the LA Kings, because this team has rebounded well after bad performances, slow starts. Last year they didn't, and the one that I remembered fondly was that Arizona Coyotes shutout, and then they lost the next two games. You can't do that if you want to prove that you're a different team this year.
Yeah, I didn't take anything away from it last night. I'm with you guys.
That the defense can't be this bad, right? And then it was the rest of the season.
Yeah.
It might be this bad.
I'm at the point where Ruby should try to decline these.
Do you know what really hurt the team? The fact that they got
going to San Jose.
The fact that they didn't get a power play against Tampa Bay. Like, you're 2 for 4 against Colorado, and you're like, hey, we actually figured this out.
We did it.
0 power play opportunities against Tampa. So you just sit on your morals that, like, oh, hey, we're actually pretty good at the power play now. And then, boom, oh, we forgot that we can score on the power play against San Jose.
They're back to being the worst power play in the NHL.
Yeah, figures. But the penalty kill went 2 for 2, guys. Moving on up.
How many shorthanded goals do they have this year?
3.
They got 3? They've got 3 power play goals, 3 shorthanded goals.
They had 7 all of last year. Actually, I think it's 4 shorthanded goals. 2 from Booth.
Well, they scored more than 7 power play goals this year.
4.
So they are literally more effective playing with a man down than a man up.
Yeah. Are they going to score 7 power play goals this year? Will they be able to tie the shorthanded goal mark from last year or no? Like, they're trending towards no, I think.
I honestly don't know about that one.
Yeah.
This power play, I mean, every time I feel like they're building something and they get 10 shots on goal, it's like, oh, well, the goaltender's great. Or when the goaltender's not great in the game at 5-on-5, oh, that's the power play that they either don't get any or they don't get any shots on their power play chances. So it's very Jekyll and Hyde.
I should, again, say this.
It doesn't matter
It
last
looked
night.
better last night. The power play looked
okay,
better.
Hold on, pause. Now let me cook. We've been saying that after a lot of power plays recently. We're like, oh, the puck
then eventually
movement.
the tide's going to turn, man.
Yeah.
Is it,
If
though?
you keep hitting the ball hard in baseball, eventually it's going to drop for some hits. That's what I was told with Matt Carpenter, and then it never changed. It never changed for Matt Carpenter.
Well, maybe they get some salsa and then it'll work.
What would be a good dish to make for a hockey team? Because salsa probably
Poutine.
Not. Yeah.
You make some poutine, some gravy and French
T-Bone
fries.
hates poutine, though.
Yeah,
He hates
I know.
everything
Look
that's
at him.
good.
Of course he hates poutine.
All right, next thing that I wanted to get to here.
Oh, there's more.
What's a reasonable level of concern about Joel Hofer? Again, I want to make this very clear. After
He's not paying
Last
attention.
night was fine.
I'm fine, okay? It's like when I ask my wife, is everything okay? I'm fine. Okay, so
But then you did this, and then you did that, and then you treated me like this, and you said this.
we're very much not fine. Cool. I will give you 10 minutes. I'll be back in a little bit. I'm fine. Joel Hofer, in his 2 losses this season, has allowed 10 goals on 63 shots. Alex, that's not ideal. I don't have to give you the math. It's bad. In his other 3 games, though, and 4 goals on 80 shots. That's great. You can't ask for much more than that out of your backup goaltender. Is this going to be a situation where Joel Hofer is very much a all-or-nothing type of a goalie at this point in his career?
I don't think so. I think this is the early portion of a young rookie goaltender's career. Like, we saw this last season, too, where he had a couple of games where we're like, oh, damn. And then he had a couple of games that was like, ooh, damn. And I think that's what this season is. Look, the Arizona Coyotes game for him, it's easy describable. He had a rough going, but the team in front of him was crap. Last night, team in front of him in the first period was not good, and they allowed the backdoor tap-ins. And in the second period, he gave up a couple of goals that probably frustrated him. As the young goaltender, and I can never act like I know this because I've never played the position, but it seems like you have that moment where that first goal gets past you and it's like, oh, damn, I can't let this thing get out of hand. Honestly, it's kind of like what Ville Husso was in his first couple of games in his time as the starter with the Blues. One would get past him off of like the second shot in the game, and then you'd be like, oh, no, here we go. And then he would either let 2 more in or he would shut down the rest of the game. So I think right now it's just the early makings of a goaltender, understanding how trends work and making sure you can figure out how to clear your mind after that first one gets past you and shut things down. And last night it just it snowballed on top of him, and he never came back from it.
And he's been good more often than he's been bad. And as long as you have that ratio, you're fine over the course of the season. Does it make it more likely, though? We were going to talk about this yesterday. Never got to it because I'm long-winded. Does it make it more likely that you end up going to Bennington closer to like 55 or 60 games if this is what you end up expecting out of Hofer this year? Like, does it increase Bennington's workload if you get this kind of up and down nature to Joel Hofer's game?
No, because they have the schedule in place, and unless Joel Hofer becomes a consistent liability every time he's in net, you're going to keep with the schedule. He was scheduled for this one because they want to make sure that Bennington's available, as Joey talked about last night. Bennington, they want him to be fresh and available for all the Central Division games down the stretch. So when games like this present themselves, it was an ideal matchup for Joel Hofer. And you laid an egg and you couldn't get it done. Well, I know. I understand it. But you're going to play Jordan Bennington against the LA Kings Saturday night. You'll play Joel Hofer against the Anaheim Ducks, and then I would imagine you stick with the same schedule. Yep. Now, if he becomes a liability in the next couple of games where you're like, hey, we can't keep tossing him out there, then Bennington gets more of the...
He's healthy. Even if they won 9 games this year and snuck into the playoffs, it's still a team that, as a Chiefs fan, I'm terrified of.
Oh, yeah.
If Joe Burrow sneaks into the postseason, he's the most terrifying guy that can come into your building because that dude can go head-to-head against whichever quarterback that you have to offer, and on any given day, he can outplay them. And if he outplays your starting quarterback, like, they might win, man. And they've got Lou Anarumo, who is one of the best defensive minds in the game. He can come up with game plans that flummox your quarterback for a half, and that might be enough. A half of bad football by your offense, a great game by Joe Burrow, boom, you're going home, Bengals are advancing. That's what they did to advance to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So they are still a team that would concern me, but this kind of an injury, if he is out for any extended period of time and they are eliminated from the playoffs as a result, it's bad for football. Honestly, because that means 2 of the first 4 years of his career, he will have essentially not been available for the Bengals, and that sucks.
Yeah, it would be awful for the NFL and the playoffs. I mean, you look at some of the top teams that we thought were going to get there. I mean, there's a chance, especially with this injury, you don't see Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, or Justin Herbert in the playoffs this year. Think about that. That's crazy to think about. Now, granted, only one of those because of injuries. And Aaron Rodgers, too, yeah. He got hurt on the first snap of the season. So the whole AFC, the talk of the quarterbacks and how deep the AFC was.
Kirk Cousins
out in the NFC. You're starting to see the list of quarterbacks that you're like, man, I hope that those guys get in because they are fun to watch. And now we're probably going to see like a Trubisky potentially get in. You look at the Browns, they've got their backup quarterback. They might be able to sneak in. But yeah, you're right. If Burrow is out for any significant time, the Bengals are just done. And look, I think their backup was okay last night. Like, you can maybe draw up some, maybe you can find a way to sneak out some wins against maybe like the Steelers. Maybe you could surprise the Jaguars, but you don't have a real shot. Like, you need your best hope is that Burrow maybe misses like 2 weeks and he's this extended time off because of this Thursday night game. He's able to somehow come back, doesn't need an IR stint, and then you go on just a late season surge and hope that somebody ends up falling out of the playoff picture.
So the other side of this, Alex, which you were referencing, was the injury that took place for the Ravens. And the Ravens right now have the second best record in the AFC. They're 8-3 on the season. And it doesn't feel that way because, Alex, we've mentioned this a number of times. They are so inconsistent offensively. Now, the defense is great. They've been great defensively from start to finish so far this year for the most part. But the offense, man, some days you watch them and you're like, man, this is one of the best offenses in the NFL. And other games you watch them and you're like, what is going on? I feel like I'm watching a rerun of last year's offense, and they should be better. They've got better weapons. Lamar Jackson is healthy this time around. They have a better offensive coordinator. It doesn't make any sense. Well, now they're going to have to overcome even more adversity on the offensive side of the ball. Here's John Harbaugh after the game last night.
I do have one injury announcement to make. Unfortunately, on the negative side, Mark Andrews has a very serious ankle injury. It looks like a season-ending injury. So our prayers will be with Mark. Nobody cares more about the team and being there for the guys than Mark Andrews. So it's going to be hard for him, but we're going to be there for him all the way.
Dude, this offense can't be what it needs to be without Mark Andrews on the field. It just can't. I don't know that I can take them seriously as a Super Bowl threat if that guy's going to be out for the rest of the year. And it sounds like where the Burrow thing is a maybe, it's almost a certainty at this point. Mark Andrews is going to miss the rest of the season. And for me, that eliminates them. from Super Bowl contention. Playoff contention, they're still going to get there. They're almost certainly going to win that division. Talking about the Super Bowl, man, if your best threats offensively are Gus Edwards, Odell Beckham Jr. in the year 2023, and Zay Flowers, nah, man, that ain't going to be enough. I don't trust that offense. Not against the Chiefs, not against some of these best teams in the NFL. Nope. That team cannot win the Super Bowl in 2023.
Yeah, the only way they do it is the way that the Ravens won the Super Bowl the last time around was their defense has to be unbelievable.
Oh, I thought you were going to say bring back Joe Flacco.
Well, Joe Flacco would be nice, too. But, I mean, your defense, and look, the defense has been the reason they've been an 8-3 team so far this season with a couple of games that the offense has shown up. But that, to me, is just as massive because, like, the red zone offense that they run is solely dictated off of Mark Andrews. And the reason that I've been so skeptical with this team is because their red zone offense never includes Mark Andrews. It doesn't seem like they want to throw it to him. They want to throw it to OBJ. They want to force it down the throat to a running back that's not working. Now you take him out of the game. Maybe Isaiah likely becomes a likely weapon for them. You're welcome. But yeah,
He's been sitting on that for a while.
Yeah, since last night. But they're bleeped. I mean, like you lose Mark Andrews, that is the key cog for that red zone offense.
And not only that, he's the chain mover. Like you got 3rd and 6, you got to extend the drive. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to get Lamar on the run. He's going to find Mark Andrews, and they're going to extend the drive. That's what they do. He's a pacifier for a quarterback, and Lamar's great. That offense has some things that I really do like. I like Zay Flowers a lot. I think he's a really good NFL wide receiver. He's a rookie, and most of his targets are coming at or near the line of scrimmage. I think Odell Beckham Jr. is starting to look better right now, especially with the downfield ability. If Odell Beckham Jr. and Zay Flowers are the top 2 guys that you can trust in your offense, I don't think that's an offense that can win the Super Bowl this year. So I think it's a real concern for them moving forward. And they're going to need that defense to not just be good. They're going to need that defense to be special in the postseason if they're going to do anything meaningful without Mark Andrews out there.
See, I do agree it's a lot tougher for them to win Super Bowl. I'm not writing them off just yet, though, because I don't trust anybody in the AFC, to be frank with you. I don't look at the Chiefs, and I don't think Mahomes has played particularly well, and I don't trust his weapons outside of Kelsey. But Kelsey needs the swift boost. Otherwise, he's just an average tight end. I look at Miami. I don't trust them completely just yet. Like, there is not one team in the AFC that I look at and I go, that's the team that you got to beat to get there.
It's Kansas City at this point.
I mean, they are because where they are in the standings right now, but I don't trust them right now.
I trust the defense.
Fine, I guess.
I trust the defense, and I trust that eventually Patrick
they go
Mahomes,
up against
Travis Kelsey, and Andy Reid will get it figured out offensively well enough. I trust their offense. I trust the Chiefs more than I trust the Ravens, sans Mark Andrews, and they're the only other team that's even close to what the Chiefs are right now.
Yeah, I still don't believe in the Chiefs just 100% yet to where I say, okay, that is the team that you're going to have to knock off. I think Kansas City could be upset in the playoffs at some point. I don't know if it would be Baltimore. I mean, I could see where Miami, if they run into them, I could see Miami taking them down. I could. I mean, I don't see if Miami gets hot with Tua and Tyreek. Yes, I do. I don't trust Kansas City offense right now. And until I can trust the offense.
I don't trust the Dolphins offense. When have they done it against any good team?
That's fair, but I don't trust. There's nobody in the AFC that I would say, okay, circle them as the team that's going to get through. Like I would hear an argument for every team.
When you get into that kind of a spot, I will defer to the team that's been to the AFC Championship game in every single season in Patrick Mahomes' career. And the only team that beats him is Joe Burrow. So if Joe Burrow ain't going to be there, I'm not trusting any of these other teams to be able to pull it off. Patrick Mahomes is going to end up in the AFC Championship game once again, and we can throw any of these other teams up against them. This is not me being a Chiefs fan. It's just the reality, man. Like,
God, I hope they lose.
Nah, dog, you're wrong. It's going to be the Houston Texans.
These teams just aren't as good as the Chiefs right now. The Chiefs have the best defense other than the Ravens, and their offense is at least similar to the Ravens. Both of them have fits and starts, and now the Ravens, like, if the Chiefs lost Travis Kelsey, we're talking about something entirely different. And now I'm right there with you, where there is no favorite in the AFC. But the Chiefs have Travis Kelsey. They have the pacifier for their offense that the Ravens just lost. So I think that the AFC right now, while open, there's one team that is very clearly at the top of the list. And they have not looked good for most of the season. But they're 7-2, and they're at the top of the AFC.
What's wild about it, though, is we're acting like that's the best team, and I could pick 2 teams, 3 teams in the NFC that are night and day better than all of these teams in the AFC.
I don't know that I can.
See, I think I can.
I think all of these teams around the league are incredibly flawed. Like, the Eagles this year are worse than the Eagles from a year ago.
I think
the Chiefs this year are worse than the Chiefs were a year ago.
I think Philadelphia, I think San Francisco. No, not San Francisco. I think Philadelphia, Dallas, and Detroit are the teams that are better than all of these AFC teams right now.
I mean, I would agree with that, but like I saw the Chiefs play against Detroit in Week 1. The Chiefs were without Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and Charles Omenihu, 3 of their like 10 best players, and they lost by 1. So I can't say that the Detroit Lions are a significantly better football team than the Chiefs when that is the backdrop to what we're talking about here.
First week of the season, weird stuff happens.
Fair. I think all of these teams are, for the most part, worse than they were last year.
I would agree with.
The 49ers are worse than last year. The Eagles worse than last year. Chiefs worse than last year. And I don't think anybody else has taken a necessary step to be better than those teams. I thought maybe the Ravens could have been that team. And now they just lost probably their second best player on the roster.
Yeah, I would agree with. I think some of these teams are taking a step back, but I do probably agree with Alex. I would definitely throw Philadelphia, Detroit. Honestly, I may even still throw San Francisco up there ahead of some of the AFC
is what
teams.
makes me worried with that.
Fair, but I think they've got an all-around better roster as a whole.
Defense.
So I think the 3 teams in the NFC are clearly better. Now, I may be able to buy more into the Chiefs if they can find a way to beat the Eagles this week when they play on Monday night.
Part of what's
so
playing into my...
if that happens, then yeah, I'll hear more of the argument about the Chiefs. If they don't, and it still doesn't look that impressive for me offensively, then I'm not going to be buying into the Kansas City Chiefs as the favorite in the AFC.
That's fair. Listen, man, I've been the one that's been highly critical of the Chiefs this year. I think they've stunk for most of the season. They're sleepwalking through this year. So is everybody else. Like, we want to talk about the Jaguars. Man, they just got absolutely blitzed by the 49ers.
I'm done with them.
We can talk as much as we want to about how the Ravens look like like a better team right now. Man, last week, they just lost to the Browns. Like, this just happened. We just saw them play against a broken Deshaun Watson, who apparently was throwing with one shoulder in the game, and he beat them. He put up 33 on their defense that we all think is so impressive. So, I don't know, man. I think all of these teams are fundamentally flawed, and the one team that I can just rely on their institutional basis, their belief that they've had for 5 years now, it's the Chiefs. So that's the one that I'm going to
I think you just got bad blood against all the other AFC
You're the worst. I hate what you did there. T-Bone didn't recognize it, but
I did. That was good.
Coming up next, it's non-Tinder Day, baby. You know what that means. We get to find out if the Cardinals are going to be keeping Dakota Hudson, Jake Woodford, Tyler O'Neill, what it means for their futures here in St. Louis. And because it's a deadline day, that means baseball actually has to do some stuff. They don't like doing that. Today's the day where they're going to have to. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
football is on ESPN. Georgia and Tennessee. Pregame at 2. Kickoff at 2:30. Your home for the NCAA is 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Sharks Mall Blues, good morning. I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. NHL worst San Jose looked like anything but a bottom feeder last night, stunning the note 5-1 in California. Former Blue Mike Hoffman tallied a pair of goals, and Joel Hofer was yanked from the contest early in the second period. St. Louis had captured 8 in a row versus the Sharks, but will now aim to rebound tomorrow against Los Angeles. NFL Week 11 is underway with Baltimore knocking off Cincinnati 34-20. The Ravens' win did not come without consequences. Head coach John Harbaugh strongly suggesting thereafter that tight end Mark Andrews suffered a season-ending ankle injury. Saturday on the college side, the number 9 Tigers conclude their home schedule. Florida comes to Columbia for a 6:30 p.m. kickoff. An opening drive guest, Cody Schrader, recognizes the opportunity to keep raising that profile.
Drink's the main one. He puts that mindset every Tuesday into the team, and different mindsets each week for each game because each game is different. But I think that's the cool thing about this team is that everybody is kind of just unspoken. Everybody just goes to work, and you can just look in each other's eyes and know that we mean business and that we're gonna put the best product possible out on the field on Saturdays.
The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at Londoff.com and LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Because of the non-tender deadline, we had a deal late last night, right before midnight Eastern time. Pretty significant one between the Braves and the White Sox. And on this list, Soroka and Lopez would have been non-tender candidates with the Braves. So the Braves say, okay, if we're going to non-tender them, let's move them on to a team that has a greater need for them and then bring back Aaron Bummer.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That was JP Morosi this morning on MLB Network talking about a trade that went down in Major League Baseball. Guys, we know how this works. Baseball teams only do business when there's a deadline that's taking place. That's the only thing that can get them to actually move. It's like T-Bone, whenever we have a guest that we want to get on and you're our bulldog that's texting them, you'll do the thing where you're like, hey, Brian. Hey, Brian. Hey, Brian.
Oh, you're a gnat.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you were a gnat.
Hey, if you don't respond, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to take it as you didn't get that message.
You know the meme of the stick figure that's like, do something. That's essentially all of us to Major League Baseball.
Tanner's
when
Stewie.
There's not a deadline.
Tanner's Stewie from Family Guy. Hey, mom, mommy. What?
The reason why I bring that up is because today's one of those days. Today's a day where teams actually are forced to make moves. It is the tender or non-tender deadline. It's going to take place this evening, and basically what this means is you decide as a team, are we going to place a tender on this player to keep them in town, or do you non-tender them and they become a part of the free agency group? So these are your arbitration players. So it's guys like Tyler O'Neill, Dakota Hudson, Tommy Edman, Ryan Helsley, Andrew Kisner, Dylan Carlson, Jake Woodford, and JoJo Romero here in St. Louis. Every team in Major League Baseball has players like that they've got to make decisions on today. And for some teams, what they will do is they'll say, you know what, we're not going to tender this guy, so instead of non-tendering him, why don't we try to get something in return? We'll make a trade, so that way somebody else can take our garbage. They can hopefully find some kind of a treasure in here, and maybe it's because we don't want to pay the salary. Maybe it's because we don't like the player. We don't believe in the player any longer. Whatever the reason. I find today to be a very interesting day for the Cardinals. I would like to see them make moves similar to what the Atlanta Braves did yesterday, where they traded a bunch of their stuff that they didn't want anymore for a reliever that they think could actually help them. That's what the Cardinals should do today. Tyler O'Neill shouldn't be here tomorrow. Dakota Hudson shouldn't be here tomorrow. Jake Woodford should not be a part of this team by this time tomorrow. I am highly skeptical that all of those things will actually take place. But, Alex, if this team is operating the way that they say they're going to and they're going to make real, meaningful, significant changes, I think all of those should be changes that take place by the end of business hours today.
I completely agree with you, but let's go down the Cardinals' path. It's not going to happen. Because one thing we know for sure is this Cardinals team values the 40-man roster, and if I'm going to do my best Mo impersonation, it's going to be, well, Brandon, how do we fill this 40-man roster if we get rid of all of those players?
Sign players.
We have to be prudent with our money, and the money that you want us to spend to sign these players for our 40-man roster, that's going to go to certain individuals that we're paying a lot of money to.
Have you looked at their 40-man roster
Yes,
recently?
it's something that should just be purged right now.
Did you know James Nail is still on the 40-man roster?
No, is he? No, I did not.
They're going to DFA him on his birthday again, aren't they?
Yeah, Mo's just waiting for the right time.
Yeah, the right time being his birthday. But, and that was tongue-in-cheek, but I am being serious. They're probably
Moises Gomez is still on the 40-man?
Well, you don't
trade him.
You don't get rid of
today.
that pop.
Moises Gomez should be traded.
Who's Michael Ciani?
Exactly. Trade him or DFA him.
That's that outfielder they acquired earlier.
Jared Young, Forever Young. We have those guys right
claimed
now.
earlier.
What are we doing with this? The Buddy Kennedy character?
Well, you just claimed him.
Hey,
You're not
by the
gonna
way,
get rid of
Jared
him.
Young.
You said they needed to have him for
Whatever.
depth.
I think it's all silly. Moises Gomez, the guy couldn't even get a call up at the end of last year. When you needed every outfielder possible, they were like, yeah, no, not Moises, though. Like anybody else but Moises Gomez.
You've got four catchers on your roster right now, like the Cardinals always seem to do.
So many spots to potentially play with. And so instead of just doing the same thing and beating your head against the wall repeatedly, go make moves, man. This is a day where other teams are incentivized to make roster decisions. Call the Tampa Bay Rays. They always have to fill out their 40-man roster on a day like today or the non-tender deadline when guys start getting a little more expensive. Call them and find out what they're selling. There's probably an arm or two that's better than what you currently have in your organization. Go get them. Go get them. Find out what the price is and go make the deal.
They're going to make the excuses for a lot of these guys, though. I can already hear it. Well, Dakota Hudson provides us depth if one of our guys doesn't pan out. Well, we've got to make sure we have Ivan Herrera on our roster because what happens if an injury takes place? Well,
that's different, though. Ivan Herrera is not the kind of guy that I'm talking about. Ivan Herrera has promise. He has a future here. They
would argue that a lot of these guys have promise and a future here.
No, they can't. Jose Fermin does not have a future in St.
Well, what happens if we lose Brendan Donovan, Tommy Edman, and Nolan Gorman in the season?
You lose.
Not if I keep my 40-man roster in place and keep this guy on the team.
Moises Gomez has no future here in St. Louis. Jose Fermin has no future here in St. Louis. And somebody on the text line, 314-399-9646, is the Air Comfort Service text line. Say, guys, if you're saying that let's get rid of all these dudes because they're bad, then the other teams are going to say the same thing. Why would we take them on? They're terrible.
True.
Look at what just took place with this trade between the White Sox and the Braves. That is the formula. The Braves got a guy who had a really down year this year as a reliever. And in return, they sent their stuff that they didn't want. They were going to non-tender like every single dude that they sent in that trade to the White Sox. The White Sox are about to enter a massive rebuilding phase. And so they're just taking on all of these spare parts to see, okay, does one of these guys end up having value by the time we get to the trade deadline? And if they do, great. We flipped a reliever that we were going to non-tender for some stuff that maybe we can get something in return for at the deadline. It's asset management. That's all this time of the year is for teams that aren't planning to win in 2024. So if you're one of these teams that's not planning to win, Dakota Hudson might have value to you. He may be a super cheap number 5 starter. Here in St. Louis, he has no value because you don't want him as your number 5 starter because you have to improve from that spot. The Kansas City Royals, man, they might have something that you can go out there and be like, hey, give us this reliever that you guys are giving up on that doesn't have a future there, that's on a 1-year deal. We'll give you Dakota Hudson, and you can find out if maybe you can tinker with the knobs and you can be the team that ends up getting fiddle with the knobs, You can get something that is a little bit more meaningful out of him than what we were able to.
Yeah, but why would you want to fiddle with someone's knob that you don't know anything about with stuff that you already know isn't great?
Well, you see something. I mean, that's the whole reason you would do it.
Though?
Like, yeah, I mean, the White Sox didn't just go, yeah, sure. Throw in this guy, and this guy.
Oh, no, I mean the Cardinals.
No,
the Cardinals can't identify
But I mean, every team operates this way. Every team's going to operate and say, here's what we think. I'm sure, let's use the Royals as an example. If they said, okay, here's a reliever that we think we can get for a Tyler O'Neill or a Dakota Hudson, who we are probably should non-tender. I think they would say, okay, we believe if we acquire this reliever, insert name here, we can tinker with his, whether it be slider or his curveball, and then we think we can make that from a pitch that's being whiffed on 20% of the time to 30% of the time. Like, those are the things that are going on today. These are the kind of moves that don't win an offseason, aren't headlines in an offseason, but can be looked back upon once we get to like August and September of, oh, wow, do you remember when they acquired so-and-so for Tyler O'Neill?
Sosa for
exactly.
JoJo Romero type of a deal. Like, that's what is made today. Now, that was a trade deadline deal, but it's something that easily could have been made on a 40-man decision day or a non-tender day, and it would have made all the sense in the world. JoJo Romero is the exact type of pitcher that you probably will acquire today. And JoJo Romero is a meaningful pitcher for this team. He's going to probably fit into your 7th or 8th inning mix next year. And the Cardinals saw something that they liked with him. They saw the velocity and the slider, and they said, hey, we can work with that. We'll see if it ends up working out here, and if not, no harm, no foul. If it does, great. Maybe we've got a leverage reliever. Those are the kinds of guys that you'll be able to potentially acquire today. On the other teams acquiring your trash, Alex, what I think they'll see is, okay, so hold on. I can acquire a guy that is 29 years old in Dakota Hudson. He has a career 3.85 ERA in almost 100 starts in the major leagues, over 470 innings, and I'm going to pay him $3 million for next year? Like, sure, yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Like, you can make a case that Dakota Hudson is a more significant piece than, what's the guy's name, the pitcher that the Guardians DFA?
Cal Quantrill?
Yeah. Like, who would you rather have, Cal Quantrill or Dakota Hudson? I think it's a wash. And the Guardians were able to find a taker for Cal Quantrill today. He's going to go to the Colorado Rockies. They got some catcher who I've never heard of in return. He'll probably end up amounting to nothing. So will whoever you get for Dakota Hudson today, most likely. But at least you tried. It might end up being the type of deal where you get Juan Yepez in return. Remember that? A few years ago, they traded a nothing burger for Juan Yepez, and Juan Yepez became something. He was the lottery ticket.
Don't just throw Big City under the bus like that.
They were done with him, though.
I know, but we didn't have to add the adjective.
It was a distressed asset that they traded to the Braves.
Traded away a St. Louis hero in Matt Adams.
Agreed. That was unfair.
Gosh.
I love Matt Adams, too. But they traded away something they were done with for a lottery ticket. They scratched the lottery ticket, and in return, they got $5.
Yeah.
That's something. It's found money.
And it's probably easier to make a move like this today with a pitcher like a Dakota Hudson because all these rebuilding teams, they don't have anywhere near the innings that they're going to need this year. Like the Royals do not have anywhere close to the innings they're going to need. The Pirates have nowhere near the innings they're going to need. And they're not going to be players for any major free agent. They might take on a project like the Pirates did 2 years ago when they signed Jose Quintana because they said, hey, look, here's some innings. Just see if you can recoup value and we'll trade you. But they'll be making a lot of moves like this. That's why Colorado acquired Cal Quantrill. Did they acquire him because they're like, this guy's going to get us to the playoffs? No, They acquired him because they want innings. And a lot of these rebuilding teams like Oakland's going to be looking for all kinds of starting pitchers today that are just like, can you just show up and throw like 5 innings every start?
They got to get through a season.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
goal for a lot of teams is, okay, how do we make it through 2024?
Without speeding up the process on the arms that we truly believe in.
Who are guys that can fill the innings for next year so we don't have to go to our guys that we actually care about?
Yeah.
Because those are the guys that we're going to build around for 2026. We got to get through 2024 before we can get to 2026. It's essentially what the Blues are doing with some of these guys that they've got on the forward spots. Like, who can we fill these minutes with that will allow us to continue to develop Dalibor Dvorsky at a proper rate? That'll allow us to hold off while we're waiting for Jimmy Snuggerud or while Bolduc ends up developing in the AHL. That's what a lot of teams are doing with their pitching right now. All right, before we get out of here, get to ask us anything on the other side. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. It sounds like the Brewers are going to be trading Brandon Woodruff by the end of the day today. He's going to make $11 million next year is the projected arbitration number. He just had shoulder surgery, which could end up making him miss the entirety of the 2024 season. Some teams think maybe he's going to start for you for like the last 10 starts of the year for you. Would you consider making this move? Like if they called and said, hey, Tyler O'Neill for Brandon Woodruff, are you doing it?
I mean, I would. I understand you get the liability with Brandon Woodruff, but what else are you going to get for Tyler O'Neill?
I don't know.
I don't really. Maybe a bullpen arm. I'd much rather get a guy that I know he's not pitching this year, but at least when he's back the following year, it's a dude who's
might not be on your team though.
Is he a free agent after that year?
You could QO him or sign him to like a 2-year deal this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably do the glass down deal essentially.
The hard part is like I just don't know what else is out there for him. I don't think you're going to get of anything of value for Tyler O'Neill, and that's pretty valuable, even him being injured.
Yeah, I would consider if it was like, yeah, okay, you're giving up a shot in the dark prospect or you're giving up a Tyler garbage. I would do that, because though these shoulder injuries are very concerning for pitchers because it's a lot easier to recover from an elbow issue than it is shoulder, as you saw with Jack Flaherty. I think Woodruff has the pedigree to where it's worth taking the shot. Now, I wouldn't probably sign him to a 2-year deal. I'd see if he starts a couple games at the back end of the season, and if he doesn't, okay, well, then we just gave up something that we weren't going to use anyways and hoping that he could recover quick enough to give us a couple starts.
I think I'm a no. Shoulders scare the hell out of me, man.
You want to keep Tyler O'Neill because you know he's got
I would just rather
potential.
trade Tyler O'Neill for something else. Like, I would rather go get a lottery ticket reliever, a guy that I think is actually going to pitch meaningful innings for me next year. I think the smart money is on Brandon Woodruff not pitching next year for a major league team. And if that ends up being the case, like, I would rather spend that $10 million that I'm otherwise going to give to Woodruff on Tyler Mahle, or go use that $10 million on a bullpen arm. That's the opportunity cost, really, is the money that you're allocating to Brandon Woodruff that I would just rather give to somebody else. Like, if I could get Sean Manaea next year for the entirety of the season for that same $11 million or Brandon Woodruff, I know this sounds crazy because obviously you'd rather have prime, healthy Brandon Woodruff, but that's not an option. I would just rather have the full 162 of Sean Manaea going into next year than Woodruff, despite the fact that obviously if he's healthy, you would definitely want that guy on the roster. All right, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for Ask Us Anything here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN has your chance to score free tickets to see Blink 182. Mobile app.
We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. You've got questions. We may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, go ahead and get them in now on the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, the Rockies general manager is answering questions about why the team traded for Cal Quantrill right now.
Oh, boy.
Did he just respond with, because we need somebody who's willing to pitch in Colorado?
Bill Schmidt says that Cal Quantrill's last 6 starts with the Guardians showed that he's overcoming his shoulder woes. He had a 2.76 ERA in those 6 starts.
Oh, good for him. He's
John
back in the
Mozeliak's
sky.
for sure saying that exact same thing about, like, Zach Thompson, right?
Oh, 100%.
He already did. He said they saw signs of progress with Matthew Liberatore last season to force him into a spot for the rotation.
That's amazing.
Mo probably just read that comment. Oh, that's good. I might use that.
Yeah, wrote that one in his little black
I mean,
book.
favored that on my Twitter account.
He's got this one written for
That's
the
going
next
to be what
press
they say
conference.
about Lucas Giolito when they give him $60 million.
No, that's what they'll say about Jack Flaherty when they bring him back.
Oh, for sure. 1 year, 15
Like,
mil.
guys, we did see progress in last year.
He had a 0 ERA in the postseason. Oh, he didn't pitch.
All right, from the 636, BK, what percentage of 101 ESPN listeners do you think find you to be their favorite broadcaster?
0.
I said the over-under at 5%. Are you guys going over or under?
Well, I'd go under. You know, I know at least a handful of people I think would call you their favorite, and that's just family. So they cover a percentage point or so. So
Sure.
I'll go under. Yeah. To be
would
fair,
say-
I don't think I'm up there in the 5%
I
range
think all
either.
3 of us are probably like at the bottom of the barrel.
I
in
think
all of this.
Randy's at least 50%. Like, if you did a randomly selected group of people of 1,000 listeners for 101 ESPN, I bet you 500 say Randy's their favorite host on 101 ESPN.
Yeah.
And then I'd say, like, the second favorite,
BT.
well, he's technically not.
Say, are
Does
we
he
counting
count?
him?
I mean, I guarantee you'd have a large chunk of people that say him.
Fair.
That's fair. So let's
And
say, like,
then Jamie.
25% say him.
Jamie.
15% say Jamie. And then the
Stalter.
others are, like, split up between Stalter and Tim.
Yeah.
And then we combine for about 1 or 2%.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm the only people that are saying that for me are my mom, my dad,
You think
my
they
wife.
do?
No, probably. I know that my mom likes she thinks I'm boring. She said, I listened
Wow,
to your show
tough
the other
crowd.
She goes, I listened to your show the other day. I said, yeah. She goes, yeah, you're kind of boring. I said, thanks, Mom. Love you too.
Man.
I said, to be fair, you don't know anything about what I'm talking about.
I mean,
but
my mom's still
appreciate it.
learning what time our show runs, so
My dad called me the other day while we were on the air. It's like, Dad, I've had the same showtime for 3.5 years. What are you doing, man? All right.
Sounds about right.
all right, maybe I overstated our percentage.
Yeah, no, we might actually be 0.
From the 314, guys, when the Cardinals decide that they're going to sit out the top of the market, who do you think is going to be their best starter for 2024?
Waka. It's probably Sonny Gray.
Yeah, I was going to say Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray is going to be their ace.
I would love it, though, if Mo's like, you know what our issue is? We just got to get the band back together. And they bring back Waka, Lynn. I don't know who else would be out there on the Flaherty.
2013 reincarnated.
Rosenthal's trying to make a comeback again.
Convince
bring him
Waino
in.
to tear up that retirement papers and do one more year.
Me and Alex's homie, Matt Adams,
right.
is
Yeah,
still playing
Yeah,
baseball.
BK's not allowed to talk about him.
Like, I think Gray's probably the guy. I think they'll get Gray in free agency, and if they don't make a trade, they'll try and convince you that he's a number one, or they'll say like, oh, you know, we were there, we were close. This is kind of a transition year for our rotation. That would be what I would say happens.
It'll be Sonny Gray.
Yeah.
Sonny Gray will be the ace, and the billboard will say it's a sunny upcoming Cardinal season.
Speaking of Sonny Gray as the number 1 starter,
Oh no, did he just sign?
it is time for a Choose Your Own Adventure Cardinals edition. This one I like to call shooting your Shota.
Ooh.
We'll get into it coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Didn't think we'd talk about that today.
Someone's got to say it. Let it be you. Use the mic drop feature in the 101 ESPN app. Search the 101 ESPN app now in the App Store or Google Play. More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
The final day of our Choose Your Own Adventure Cardinals offseason edition. It's been a blast. It's been really great. Maybe we'll continue to send it next week, depending on how you guys feel about it.
I find it depressing.
Who do you think it's been a blast for?
Me. I've been having a lot of fun putting these together.
What's
giving you guys the options of what the offseason's going to look like. I know all of them are completely unfulfilling, but hey, welcome to Cardinals baseball.
It's why it's depressing. You know, I just want to dream about them signing the 3 top starters and just go about my day.
How cool would it be if they signed Aaron Nola, Sonny Gray, and
what name would you give that offseason?
Yamamoto. Well, that would be so cool.
Cardinals did what was actually needed. That would be what it would be called.
That doesn't have a good ring to it.
I know.
The Cardinals go bankrupt.
True.
Of the Cardinals offseason. No,
Cardinals need a $50 million loan.
Yeah, that would be the Cardinals trade Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado edition.
Oh, ooh, fancy.
Now we're getting interesting, right?
Fancy.
So that is not one of the scenarios that I painted for you because
That's
it's not
called
happening.
that's called Shota your Shota.
What? That was terrible.
No, I didn't
Genuinely
think so.
awful.
I thought it was actually good.
No.
That was.
Yeah, that's right.
I did
That's right.
not want to hear that
Bradford
one.
Bruns back in the studio. We're broadcasting live from the
That
ENB
hurt my
Grant
ears,
Studios
Bradford.
out at the Centene Community Ice Center alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. All right, so if you're new to this, what we do, I went through all the projections of, okay, what are these guys going to get realistically this offseason? What are the contract projections? And how could they potentially fit into the $50 million, roughly, budget that the Cardinals have to spend this offseason? So I go through, and whether it's trades, free agency, all of these different things, what could a realistic scenario look like for the Cardinals offseason? We've gone through a bunch of different scenarios. One had Blake Snell as the top target. Another had Aaron Nola. Another had Dylan Cease. And frankly, you guys don't like any of them. The one yesterday was really, really panned. You guys really hated the idea of trading Nolan Gorman, Tink Hence, and Luken Baker for Dylan Cease. And about 25% of you gave that a D or an F.
Well, guess what, everybody? That's the only way you're getting a stud.
It might be. So today, we're going with the one that you may hate even more. This one I call shooting your Shota. So it starts out with the Cardinals doing what we all know they're really going to do. They signed Sonny Gray for 3 years, $66 million. So $22 million per year. They get their guy. Sonny Gray is the top pitcher that they add.
Overpay.
The second thing they do, they go over to Japan, and they do not sign Yamamoto. However, they do sign the second best starting pitcher that's coming over from Japan this offseason, Shota Imanaga. 4 years, $60 million. A more than reasonable deal, $15 million per year, and you've got Sonny Gray and Shota Imanaga as your top 2 starters going into next season, with Michaelis as your 3 and Matz as your number 4. Then they add Seth Lugo, a really good starter, reliever, swingman type of option. He was a starter last season, had a great season, and you get him on a 2-year deal worth $25 million, about $12 million per year. So you're adding a lot of depth to your rotation here. You don't have a real legitimate number 1 guy, but you've got some decent depth here that you've added. Then you continue with the theme of going overseas. You add Yuki Matsui, who is the top reliever that is coming over from Asia this offseason. Cardinals sign him 2 years, $15 million, and then they do what I've done in every single one of these options because they have to do this. They're trading Tyler O'Neill for a mid-tier reliever. So you added Sonny Gray, you add Shota Imanaga, Seth Lugo, Yuki Matsui, and another mid-tier reliever. So you got your 3 starters, you got your 2 relievers, you got one of those starters as a swingman who can kind of go back and forth depending on what you need. How would you guys grade that offseason? You can always go over to Twitter at BK Sports Talk. You can put the grade in right now. But for Alex, what would you give that offseason as a grade?
Well, you shoot your shot and got an A.
Really?
Yeah, because I love this offseason.
They don't have a number 1.
I get it, but I like this one the best because even though you didn't get a number 1 and even though you didn't get that guy that you're worried to go up against, Sonny Gray is still a really good pitcher. He's probably the best that realistically you can acquire to not trade Nolan Gorman. But you also got somebody who's got some upside here in Imanaga, and you got that depth piece with Seth Lugo. And in my opinion, I think you got a really good bullpen piece with Matsui. If I could I add one in here?
No.
Could I trade Carlson for Manoah?
I mean,
because that would
I'm saying I'm putting my foot down. No,
you
this
signed
is the
Seth Lugo. You don't need Manoah.
I do need Manoah because then I gotta hope that he becomes great, and then there's my ace.
I kind of like the idea there, but no, I'm putting my foot down and saying this is what they do. The Cardinals aren't going to make that many moves. Let's be honest.
Why? Instead of trading Tyler O'Neill for nothing, you trade Dylan Carlson for Manoah.
What do you mean, why? Because they're going to say...
Oh, I'm sorry. Does Mo have better things to do with this time than upgrade his team?
Yes.
I was talking to somebody the other day about what the Cardinals could do this offseason, and we put out like this full list of like 7 different things that they would do, right? Like 3 trades, 4 signings. This is going to be the... They're like, they're never going to make that many moves. Why? Because it's Mo. Like, he doesn't make a quantity of moves that is that great.
He's the typical...
Especially when it comes to trades.
But that's not making like a quantity of moves. You're making 4 signings in 1 trade.
I am with you. I think that you should be able to do a lot of moves this offseason because that is what is necessary. That is what is needed, given what you just went through this past season. But they're not going to, so let's focus on this. T-Bone?
You know what? C then. It's your damn tone. F. F for this stupid offseason.
I'm not impressed with this offseason. I'm actually shocked you gave it an A. I would give this a D. This is a terrible offseason. It's actually the most likely they're going to do, too, probably. I mean, you bring in Gray, which I like, but again, he's not a number one. He does not strike fear into you. You've got Imanaga, who to me would probably be right there with Michaelis as your 3. And then you've got Lugo, which I guess helps in that number 5 spot, but we've talked about how much does number 5 starter truly matter. I don't know what to think of Matsui as a bullpen arm, and then I don't know about this reliever you're getting for Tyler O'Neill. Like, this rotation, the way I picture this with Gray, Imanaga, Michaelis, Mats, and Seth Lugo, that's like a 82 to 84 win team.
I disagree with that.
I think that's where you are. I mean, that's not a rotation that strikes fear to anybody. That rotation comes to town, and I go, yeah, we could beat that.
This rotation gets you to 90-plus wins in the regular season, and then it has nobody that strikes fear of you in the postseason.
And that's fine.
I don't think it gets you to 90-plus wins because I don't think that's good. The Central Division is going to be better than we expect.
If we want to, we can go through some of the rotations across Major League Baseball that won this year. Like, a lot of them were not particularly good. I also think you're underestimating. Like, Sonny Gray's a good Major League starting pitcher.
And Eno Sarah said he likes Imanaga just as much as he likes Yamamoto.
Yeah, I don't think this rotation would be good enough. I think you could probably get into the playoffs, but I don't think you're winning the Central. I think the Cubs probably won the Central with their spending.
Seth Lugo last year had a 3.5 ERA. If you just plucked that into the Cardinals rotation last year, you would have been the Cardinals' best pitcher.
I think that wins the NL Central. I don't think you do any damage in the postseason with that.
Agreed.
But guess what, guys? This is the route. That's what's going to happen if you choose not to go for the top tier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
But that's
with
why
that.
I gave it an A because, like, hey, you're winning the NL Central. You're doing what the Cardinals wanted to do, right? Just get into the playoffs. That's a rotation that can do that.
Really, what we're talking about here is what I think is the single most important question for the Cardinals to answer during the offseason. Can you win at a high level in Major League Baseball now without having a number 1? Because what you're saying, T-Bone, is essentially you don't have a number 1 in this scenario, so you can't win. I don't know that I agree with that. I actually think you can win without a number 1 starter in Major League Baseball during the regular season. In fact, the Cardinals have been doing that in the I don't think this is all that dissimilar from what the Cardinals had in the rotation 2 years ago. Like, was their rotation better than this?
No, and that's why it reminds me of the rotation from 2 years ago. But I don't like that. I didn't think that team was.
But we acted like that team was going to get something done in the postseason.
Yeah, but like to your point, do you have a number? Do you need a number 1? I mean, I'm looking at all these playoff teams. They had a number 1. The only team that didn't was arguably the Dodgers, and that's because they fell apart at the end of the year.
Right, but I think we're all under the same understanding that this team's not going to have something that makes you dangerous in the postseason.
I don't think this is all that dissimilar from what the Twins had this year. And the Twins ended up being a postseason team.
I think Pablo Lopez became viewed as a number 1 across baseball.
Sure, but he's not all that dissimilar from Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray was better than him on his own team this year and ended up in the Cy Young conversation when Lopez was not.
I'm going to crush this team on this offseason. This is not a good enough offseason for this Cardinals team. A team that needs 3 starters, and one of them needs to be a game changer.
I can't have that.
If they want to build for just the NL Central, fine. Go do this. They should be building for more. That should be the goal this offseason.
I agree. I would not. I'm actually surprised by how much this is getting a positive response. Like, I'm actually genuinely shocked by how much people like this offseason. I think this is a very realistic offseason for the Cardinals. In fact, if I was to put money on which one of the offseasons that we have discussed is most likely for the Cardinals, I think it's this one. Because you're not giving out more than a 4-year deal to anybody. You're not giving out more than $66 million to anybody. And you end up with a lot of guys that are, pretty good. I don't think any of these would end up being a bad contract for the Cardinals. I'd be pretty surprised if any of them ended up just being an abject failure for you. I think Sonny Gray's going to be good. I think Shota Imanaga is probably going to be pretty solid. I think Seth Lugo, whoever gets him, is going to be pretty happy with what they get out of him for $12 million a year as a swingman. That being said, I don't think this helps you in the postseason. And I think what you should be trying to do is not just winning in the regular season, but also setting yourself up for postseason success for the first time in almost a decade. Yeah. And if you end up with this, it puts you into a spot as a Cardinals front office member of saying, we are going to trade for a frontline starter at the deadline. And that is not something this team is comfortable doing. Because you think they don't like winning the auctions in the offseason? Oh, buddy. Wait till the auction for that number 1 starter that becomes available during the trade deadline. They ain't going to do that. that's when you're really going to have to start talking about trading a Tinkins or a Victor Scott or whoever else the top prospect is that emerges for them going into next season. So I think this would leave them short in terms of being a legitimate contender, but I'm a little surprised by the number of people that view this as a good offseason. I think it's very realistic. I don't think it's great, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does exactly what the Cardinals want to do in terms of keep all of your pieces in place so you can develop that ace internally and bring in a rotation that makes you competitive until one of those guys takes over. That's why I was trying to get Alek Manoah, because then at least you got a guy who could be an ace for you, but you got to hope that you can actually fix what problems he has.
Yeah, and for me, the whole reason that I'm so negative about this is, to me, I still expect the Cubs to spend big. And if the Cubs do make the moves that I think they're going to make this offseason, whether that is landing a starter, re-signing Cody Bellinger, I think they would be favored over you in the NL Central with this rotation. Because I think this rotation would get you through a regular season. I think you could win maybe 90 games if you get bounce-back years from Goldie and Arenado, which the Cardinals are clearly planning on. But I still don't know if that would be enough to win over the Chicago Cubs. Like, I would view the Cubs as, again, assuming they do the moves that it sounds like they're willing to make this offseason, they would be viewed as the favorite. And then you're going back into that NL wildcard race, and they're not going to make the move at the deadline for the ace. They've never shown an appetite to make that kind of a move at a trade deadline.
If you're not going to trade for it at the offseason and moving these guys for an ace, you're not going to do it at the deadline.
For what it's worth, I think this is very similar to what the rotation was for the Rangers that ended up winning the World Series.
But the difference was they went out and got Max Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery.
They tried. Yeah. But the rotation that they had for the vast majority of the season, like if we're looking at the number of starts that the guys made that we're talking about that are like real game changers for them, Max Scherzer made 8 starts this year for them after the trade deadline. He was really good, but made 8 starts for them and had a 3.2 ERA. I could see Sonny Gray having something similar next year, and I don't think it should be a shock to anybody. Jacob deGrom, 6 starts for them last year, had a 2.7 ERA. I don't think anybody that you acquired is going to give you that, but it was 6 starts for them last year. The guys that ended up starting the majority of the games for the Rangers a year ago: John Gray, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, Nate Eovaldi, Martin Perez, Jordan Montgomery. None of those 6 guys are significantly better than the guys that you would be signing or having in your rotation going into next year.
And I've said this since the Rangers won the World Series. That would be learning the wrong lessons from the Texas Rangers. To where you look at that rotation and go, yeah, look, we just built the same thing. We can go win a World Series. That Rangers team, in my opinion, is going to be viewed. And this isn't taking anything away from them because they got the job done, which is impressive. That team, when we look back on that Rangers team in 2033, we're going to look back at that Rangers team and go, yeah, that was probably the one-off. Everybody else had an ace that led them to the promised land, and the Rangers were led with Eovaldi and Montgomery, who are 2s and 3s.
I want to be very clear here because we got this text. Guys, BK has his Mo pants on today. I'll make my stance very clear just because I've been playing the other side. Because I think it's important to do so when we're having these kinds of conversations, to give both sides of it. Because I do think this is something that the Cardinals very well may do. I think it's the most likely outcome for the offseason. I've been saying all along, I think Sonny Gray is going to be their starter, and I think he's going to probably end up being the best starter that they sign, if we're just being totally realistic about it. I don't think this would be a good offseason. And so I would give it like a B, but only because like you got the depth that you needed. The next step would then have to be, though, you've got to double down on it. You are putting a lot of pressure on yourself for the deadline to go get your version of Max Scherzer, to go get your version of Jacob deGrom. And I don't view the Cardinals as a team that's going to go out there and do it. So I think you're going to leave yourself potentially short once again. So that's where I stand on it. But I did want to make sure that we presented the other side because that's what the Cardinals are probably going to try to do. Coming up next, we're getting to our football pick'em going into the week. T-Bone's got a lot of ground to make up in our football pick'em challenge. So does Alex, though, because they're both pulling up the rear with me being in the front this time around. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN has your chance to score free tickets to Creed on Friday night, August 9th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Creed are reunited and bringing the Summer of 99 tour to town this August with special guests Three Doors Down and Finger 11. Get all the ticket details and get entered to win those free tickets for the show right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN, and it is officially time, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for us to get to our football pick'em of the week. Through 2 weeks of this month's pick'em, I have 11 points. T-Bone has 8 points. Alex, buddy, you got 5 points through the first 2 weeks of this pick'em.
Better than 4.
You are right where I was at this point in the last couple. It's not a good place to be, let me tell you. It does not feel good to be back there. You will get the first selection. For people that are new to this, the way that it works, we will pick 3 games from the weekend. We don't do props. We don't do point totals. It's strictly the against the spread number. Could be college, could be NFL. No real harm or foul there. Alex, what is your 1-point game? You've got 3 games, scale of 1 to 3, 3 being the most. What is your 1 point?
All right, 1-point play going to the NFL because it's done so good for me so far this week. I'm taking Detroit minus 7.5, and it concerns me, the 7.5 number, because I think Chicago can stay with them offensively, but Justin Fields just coming back after being gone for like 4 weeks. I think Detroit's rolling right now. I believe that's a home game, so Detroit's going to be able to hold down the fort. I'm going to say Detroit minus 7.5, my 1-point play.
I like that one. I don't think the Bears can keep that thing close.
I would have loved it more if it was 6.5. 7.5 worries me, but I think if you get ahead of them early, you just kind of bring the pain and end the game early.
Yeah. Was it me for my 1-point play now? My 1-point play, I'm going to stay in the NFL as well, and I'm going to go to the Sunday night football game. And, man, what a stinker it sure is. But I think the Vikings are a better football team than the Denver Broncos. Josh Dobbs is going to find his guy, T.J. Hawkinson. I just looked this up. Justin Jefferson has been practicing, so maybe he can be activated for that game. I think Vikings are definitely a better team than Denver. I think people are getting a little out over their skis on the Denver Broncos after their win on Monday Night Football against the Josh Allen Bills. So I like Minnesota plus 2.5 against the Denver Broncos.
My 1-point play. I'm also going with an NFL game. I mentioned this earlier in the day. I'm going with it. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go into Cleveland and beat the crap out of the Cleveland Browns. You're going with Dorian Thompson-Robinson again. We're really going through this one, and they're going up against this Steelers defense without their offensive tackles. They don't have Nick Chubb to be able to hand the ball to. They have a terrible quarterback starting for them. They have an offensive line that's been decimated by injury. And this defense is going to have to score 14 points for them to beat the Steelers this weekend. I don't think the Steelers are this great football team. They've been outgained in every game so far this year, and yet, they are 6-3 on the season. Mike Tomlin is an excellent head coach. The over-under on this game is 32.5 points. Total. For both teams combined, I think the Steelers end up winning like a 17-13 type of a game. They're a 1.5-point underdog on the road. I think they should be a 3-point favorite on the road in this one. Give me the Steelers plus the 1.5.
Well, I hate agreeing with BK, but that's my 3-point play. I'm very confident in this one. Plus, Pat Freiermuth is coming off of the injured reserve to play on Sunday. That's a massive weapon for Kenny Pickett. The running game's been great. I'm done with Cleveland, and that 1.5-point underdog is just amazing to me. So that's my 3-point play.
I just trust neither one of those teams to where I could hear the argument for either side to win that football game. And, hey, we just talked about Joe Flacco. Apparently he's visiting with the Cleveland Browns today. Maybe he gets into the game if
that's who they went with, not Phillip Rivers. That's who they went with?
Well, Philip only wants to show up for the Super Bowl, you know? So
Smart.
My 2-point game, I'm going to the college slate. Guys, they're the best team in the country. And Maryland lost to Illinois. That's all you need to know. Give me the Michigan Wolverines, minus 19 at Maryland. They're going to kick the crap out of them. I know some people would say it might be a trap game because they got Ohio State the following week. No, this team's been taking care of business all season long. Give me Michigan minus 19 on the road at Maryland.
I've been going back and forth between two different games because I've wondered, should I go with it? Should I go with it? Should I go with it? I'm going to go with it. I think last week broke Tennessee's will. I think the Missouri Tigers broke them.
Yeah, makes sense.
And now...
I thought you were making a really good joke about Titans, how their loss broke their will, like Will Levis. I was like, dude, this is really good.
No,
you were
that would have been
there.
a good one, but no, I'm not going that route. I'm going to the college side of things. Yes, Georgia's going on the road. Yes, this is going to be in Knoxville. And yes, I think the Georgia Bulldogs are going to beat the ever-living hell out of the Tennessee Volunteers. You can throw against this defense. You can't run against them unless you have Cody Schrader in the backfield. I think Georgia's going to win this game like 41-20. And the line is only 10.5 points. Give me the Georgia Bulldogs minus the 10.5 points. They have finally woken up and remembered, oh, yeah, we are the best team in the country. I don't think it's Michigan. I think it's back to being Georgia again. I was skeptical all season long. They showed me something over the last couple of weeks. Give me the Bulldogs. They're going to take down the Vols.
Well, that's my 3-point play. I've got Georgia minus the 10.5 at Tennessee. I'm with you. I don't know if they're still the best team in the country, but they're definitely one of the top 4. And Tennessee, Joe Milton, they're going to get behind early. And as we've talked about, Joe Milton couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. So I don't think Tennessee's got a shot. I know Georgia's going on the road. That hasn't really scared them. Ever since their scare early on with, South Carolina, they've really just kind of turned it to another gear. So I like them minus 10.5 at Tennessee as well.
Well, guys, this might surprise you. I'm going to the college football slate for my
Whoa!
2-point play. I know.
What?
I don't do it, but I think we got to break the schneid.
You're going to take Illinois, aren't you?
I'm taking the Missouri Tigers.
Oh, no.
Yeah, baby. I'm taking a minus 10.5. I love it. Florida's trash. Mizzou's on a roll right now. I like it. Home game.
I've got 11. Is that okay? Do you see it at 10.5 somewhere? If you could find it at 10.5, I will give it to you.
I looked at it at 10.5 a segment ago.
I saw it at 11.5 most places last night. It dropped to 11.
I want to double
overnight.
check this one.
But I want to make sure because we've had some issues in the past with
Everybody
you.
yells at me.
I do like this pick. I almost took this game.
I got
against Florida.
10.5 on FanDuel.
Beautiful.
All right.
Mizzou minus 10.5.
That's it. My 2-point play.
I actually like that one.
I do too.
I almost made it my 3-point play, but
I almost made it my 1-point play, but I don't know what it is. For some reason, BK is working with him for 3 years. Now just always scares me of a Mizzou letdown somewhere.
I know.
So I've been trying to avoid them all season long.
But I looked at it last night, man. Like, Florida has, they've been competitive. They put up a ton of points, but it's like against Arkansas and South Carolina. Against the competent teams, they barely put up 20 points. And I think Mizzou's defense has shown the ability to shut down the other side. And I don't think Florida's defense can stop Mizzou.
Are they still starting, what's his name? Is it Mert? Is that his name?
Yeah, he's actually been playing better lately.
Yeah, so I can tell you this, watching him when he was in the Big Ten, I haven't seen him as much at Florida because who just cares about the Gators this year? He is good. He has one quarter where, like, my gosh, this is the best quarterback I've ever seen play college football. And then the other 3, you go, now I see why he's so inconsistent. So there's going to be one quarter where Mertz is going to make this thing interesting. It could be garbage time. It could be right off the bat. It could be somewhere in the middle. But 3 of those quarters are going to be bad.
Here's what I love about this, though. I don't have any matches with T-Bone. I know I got the one match with you. I have 0 matches with T-Bone. And that's the important thing with this one.
All right, final pick for us is my 3-point play. Guys, I've been saying it all year long. Bryce Young is atrocious. And now he's going up against one of the best defensive lines in the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys. I took the Cowboys minus a huge number last week against the Giants and never even had to think twice about it. That game was over by the time we got to halftime, and I was covering by the time we got to halftime. I think it's going to be something incredibly similar this week. This is on the road. It's at Carolina, and so you have to lay fewer points, and that's part of why I love it. 10.5 points for the Cowboys on the road at the Carolina Panthers. I don't know how the Panthers score in this game. I think the Cowboys are going to be able to do whatever they want to do. I think they're going to keep going to the air. They're going to keep feeding it to CeeDee Lamb. Give me the Cowboys minus the 10.5 points. How about them Cowboys in Carolina this weekend? our picks for the week.
God, it would be great if Carolina kept that close.
Lions minus 7.5 is one that Alex is going to take for his 1-point play. He's got the Missouri Tigers minus 10.5 at home against the Florida Gators, game that I will be in attendance for. Please, God, do not lose this game. The Steelers plus 1.5 on the road at the Browns. Those are his 3 plays going into the weekend. T-Bone, you have the Vikings, correct? That's the side you took on that one. Plus the 2.5 points on the road at Denver. He's got Michigan minus 19. He likes the Georgia Bulldogs minus 10.5. I also have the Bulldogs minus the 10.5 points at Tennessee. I've got the Steelers plus 1.5 points along with Alex in Cleveland. And I'm going to go with the Cowboys minus the 10.5 points at the Panthers. Those are our picks going into the weekend. If you want to fade, you want to follow, you could do exactly that. We will be giving you all of the results come Monday morning. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll be diving into the junk drawer. But next, the Blues looked terrible last night, and we're all kind of going to give them a mulligan. They do have to avoid, though, the pitfall that they fell into a year ago. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Give us your opinion on the Air Comfort Service heating, cooling, and insulation text line at 314-399-9646 on 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Hoffman helps San Jose shock St. Louis. I'm Bradford Bruns, and this SportsCenter update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Sharks enter Thursday's bout versus the Note with just 2 victories on the season, but the Pacific Division cellar dwellers trounced Joel Hofer and company 5-1. Familiar face Mike Hoffman, 2 of those goals. Hofer was chased from the net after 22 minutes and change, and the Blues tasked now with rebounding tomorrow in the City of Angels. The puck drops at 9 9:30 once more on 101 ESPN. About 3 hours earlier, number 9 Mizzou will kick off its regular season home finale. Fading Florida is the foe, although running back Cody Schrader recognizes the stakes.
Every week we have to show up because I think even with the success we've had, there's a lot of people who even last week didn't believe we were going to beat Tennessee. And I think this week there's probably still doubters, maybe who think we won't beat Florida or won't, be in the New Year's Six Bowl or whatever, doubts that they have of this team. And, I think it's kind of been the mantra since, Mizzou has been in the SEC is that it's like, do they really belong? And I think for this team, it's just showing up every day to work and replicating the process and proving to everybody in this locker room that we do belong.
The graduate senior joined the opening drive this morning, and you can hear that full conversation right now on 101ESPN.com. The SportsCenter update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So the Blues stunk last night. There's no way around it. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center.
But you're past it, right? Doesn't bother you.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Doesn't bother him.
Mulligan. I don't care that they lost last night, and I'm being totally honest about this, guys. They won 4 or 5 of their last 6 games. They had been playing really well. You get one bad game. If it dips into this weekend and they continue playing the way they did against San Jose, then I will start being concerned. Because last night the structure looked bad. Like everything about that was the head dip moment came back. It looked like last season. And it looked like last season against, without question, the single worst team in the NHL right now. It's inexcusable, but it was a trap game of all trap games. So now you're going on the road at LA and then at Anaheim over the next 2 nights, Alex. Saturday, Sunday, back-to-back. I don't want to hear about a back-to-back situation. I don't want to hear about a backup goalie playing in net on Sunday.
Coming from the guy who complained about the short week for Thursday night football in Baltimore.
I don't want to hear about how the time was changing and they were sleeping in these beautiful 5-star. I don't want to hear about anything with the travel arrangements. You got your mulligan in San Jose. Now you got to show yourself the best foot forward in these 2 games against LA and Anaheim. And Alex, one of the main reasons why is because we're all waiting for a sign that this is going to be like last year. We're all sitting back and being like, okay, I'm willing to touch the stove, but if it's hot again, I'm all the way out, right? Mm-hmm. And so yesterday, Doug Armstrong was on a podcast with Frank Saravalli. And Frank Saravalli asked him, hey, when did you know last year that it just wasn't going to be the year for the Blues? Here's what Doug Armstrong had to say.
Last year, we were losing games that we should have lost. And there's a big difference. We weren't competitive. We didn't do the things that gave you hope that you were going to get out of it. And we were so streaky. Like we won 3, lost 8, won 7, lost 5. There was too much volatility in our group, and we could never find anything that made anyone feel that there was going to be a stabling part that could move forward. So we made those decisions.
This year, I do think you have some of that stabilization. You've got a goaltender that you can rely on. Jordan Bennington, after he got in last night, was great. He was great. Your structure, for the most part this year, has been something you can rely on going game to game. And with those 2 things in place, Alex, this team shouldn't be streaky like it was last year. And it hasn't been thus far. But if you lose the next couple of games, that's where you start to wonder, is the slide coming the way that it did a year ago? That's what they absolutely have to avoid. So next couple of days, they got to go out there and look better.
Yeah, that's that mental strength. And they didn't have it last year. They didn't have the attitude that could put them back into hockey games. And right now, the one thing we haven't seen from this Blues team is the ability to come from behind. They've still had 0 lead changes in a game yet this season. When they score first, they hold on to it. When they're behind, they're not coming back in that hockey game. So they got to prove that side of it. But the thing about that loss last night was it was so different from the Vancouver Canucks game. From start to finish, you were outplayed by Vancouver. The Blues actually got back to what they needed to do. The problem was they couldn't figure out what they needed to do to beat the goaltender. So this is game against the Anaheim Ducks that typically these Blues get up for because it's a competent opponent. That one felt like a trap game. But you're right. If you go into this game against the Anaheim Ducks, like Doug Armstrong talked about there, where you become this streaky team, where once again you start off slow, once again you look like you don't know how to play this system, once again you've got zero offensive ability, then we're starting to get to the point where we're concerned. But for right now, the mental strength of this team has been significantly different than last year, because the Arizona Coyotes dud, you come out and you dominate the Calgary Flames. The loss against the Winnipeg Jets, look, it wasn't a victory, but you played well in that Colorado Avalanche 4-1 loss. So the times that you've laid eggs, you've responded with a really dominant performance. If you go out there and destroy the LA Kings and then you play Anaheim and you struggle in that one, okay, well, we're right back to what we were at the start of the season. But if you go lay the egg versus LA and then Anaheim, now we're talking about last season.
Yeah, and when I look at this team, I think they can still avoid those pitfalls because you've got Binnington playing sound in front of you. Now, we'll see how the structure ends up rebounding, but I think the biggest thing for me is they just look bought in. And like last year, even though they were going through that like 7-game win streak, 8-game losing streak, like it never felt like they were bought in and they never had chemistry on their lines. And we talked about that. We've talked about that a lot so far this year. Is they now feel like they go, okay, we know what what all four lines are going to be. Last year at this time, it was like, okay, Levo's up there. No, okay, Saad's going to go back up there. Like there was all kinds of just shuffling around the 12 forwards on any given night to try and see if you could get any chemistry going. So that's the biggest thing for me. And look, that could change. You know, they lose these 3 games on the road. Alarm bells will start to sound a little bit for me. But I think the reason that I don't feel that way is it just looks like there's buy-in on the ice. And I never felt that way about last year's team. Last year it was always like, it just feels kind of like they're playing their game. And Burby would say post-game where, we're not getting guys to buy in. We're not in this game. We were never there. We were never competing hard enough. And this year, there's been 1 or 2 games, really, the Sharks and that Canucks game, where it's been like, yeah, they just didn't compete. But that happens over a regular season. You're going to have an off night. And I think that's all that was last night. That is
it's gotta be
how do you respond? Yes,
yeah.
that's what it's got to be. There cannot be any more of those deep valleys that are like 7-game losing streaks.
Because this is what retool teams do. Retool teams are still trying to figure out how to be consistent. Rebuilding teams are trying to figure out how to win hockey games. The Blues have proven that they can win hockey games. Now it's okay, what did we do in this last game that we can continue in this game? Honestly, last night, it probably was the Blues were a little bit too cocky of the way that they've been playing. You come off of a shutout victory against Tampa Bay. You knock off the Colorado Avalanche and put 8 up on them. Your power play went 2 for 4 in that Avalanche game. You're not taking penalties, and you're sitting thinking, yeah, we're good. And then San Jose was the more aggressive team. I asked Joey that yesterday. Remember, the Blues have, and I don't want to make it as an excuse, but the Blues have had the luxury of other teams looking at them on the schedule the way that the Blues just looked at the Sharks of, this is going to be an easy win for us. The Blues don't know who they are right now. And now I think teams are looking at the Blues as, this is going to be tough because they're physical, their defensive structure does not allow a lot of high-danger chances, and their goaltending's been hot. All of those were broken because of a harder work ethic in the performance on ice by the Sharks.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Last thing on this before we get to the juncture on the other side. Guys, how many games will it take before we quit relating this team to last year like Braden Shin said we should? Well, Braden Shin said that because he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And I don't blame him for not wanting to talk about it anymore. And when it comes to asking the players these questions, I'm not really, frankly, particularly interested in hearing their answers about it. But on the outside looking in, we are going to continue talking about last year's team because that is the last team that we saw that had the St. Louis Blues on their chest. So, yeah, I'm going to continue doing it because that's what we have as a comparison point. And the team, while different, the end of last season, it's basically the same roster. Like, you made a couple of tweaks, but it's really just like a new backup goalie and Kevin Hayes and Oscar Sundqvist, I guess. Like, the fourth line is a little different as well. But for the most part, it's the same team. Different structure, different assistant coaches, mostly the same team as it was a year ago. And so when we're thinking about, okay, what does it look like in relation to that and why are they better than that? Yeah, I'm going to keep bringing it up until they prove to us once and for all, and to answer the question directly, probably January 1st. If they prove to us by New Year's that this year is going to be different and that Jordan Binnington is going to sustain this level of performance and the defensive structure is here to stay, then yeah, At that point in time, we will probably stop comparing it to a year ago, and we'll start projecting forward as, okay, what is this going to be? What does it mean?
If I could be honest, I don't think we're going to stop comparing it to last year until they make the playoffs. I think it carries all through the season, because even in January, we could be talking about this team looking good and up and downs, but we're still going to be wondering when the snowball is going to come, because that's what last year presented. You're a retooling team. But to compare the two, I already think it's pretty obvious they're not the same team.
I agree.
Because we haven't seen a 7-game losing streak. Like, there have been moments where T-Bone said it. This is going to be the snowball moment, and they haven't done it yet. Now, does it happen here? If it does, well, then we can get back to saying that, yeah, this might be the same team. But for right now, I think they've already surpassed that moment to be considered last year's team, because last year's team was very mentally soft in those types of games.
And I'm not even going off of like a winning streak, a losing streak. It just looks
overall
different.
Play. Yeah.
Like, use the eye test, and that's what people want to use in baseball. So I'm going to use it here for hockey. The defense are structured. The defense has been better. They were going into that game at like 2.5 goals against. Like, that was a goal better than it was a year ago. Offensively, they look worse. But the biggest change that you needed to see this year was about the defense. That was the whole thing, was the defense in Bennington. And Bennington's been awesome when he's been in between the pipes, and the defense is allowing a goal less per game. That's all I need to see.
It reminds me a lot of the 2017-18 team so far with what we've seen. And that was Mike Yo's first full season as the head coach here in St. Louis. And that year, if you remember, the Blues had really good goal suppression, struggled a little bit to get the goal scoring going, and ended the season just a little bit outside of the playoffs. Finished the year with like 90, I think it was like 94 wins or 94 points, something like that. I think it reminds me a little bit of that season. So
yeah.
I think it's much more that than it is what we saw a year ago.
Yeah.
That's where I place them currently. All right, coming up next, it's time for the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
Open up your 101 mobile app and use the code PBR for your chance to win a 4-pack of passes for the professional bull riders. Bugging your way back into St. Louis for PBR Unleash the Beast, December 2nd and 3rd at Enterprise Center. For 2 nights only, the top bull riders in the world will compete in one of the most exciting live sporting events to witness. Enter to win that 4-pack of passes for the PBR Unleash the Beast right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trust wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It is time for the junk drawer. And Alex, yesterday, I went to Starbucks before our show, and I've got a question for you. Why is it that people go crazy, and I mean crazy, over the new flavors that are brought out by Starbucks? The chestnut praline was debuted yesterday.
Ugh. It's a chestnut flavored drink?
So I order online, right? Because I'm not a crazy person who walks in and attempts to get their Starbucks coffee in line where it's going to take you 30 minutes.
You don't like waiting an hour for coffee?
So I ordered 15 minutes ahead of arriving. That's typically enough time. Alex, yesterday I got there, and it took another 15 minutes of waiting while I was there. And listen, I'm not complaining. It is what it is. Like, I got to wait 15 minutes for coffee, whatever. But I walked up there, and I was like, hey, I've got a to-go order for Brandon. They said, well, it's the busiest day of the year for us. It's going to probably take another 15 minutes because of the new flavors being added to the menu today. What am I missing here? Are you one of these crazy people,
Tanner, absolutely.
that's going there day
Whoa,
one for the
whoa.
chestnut
No.
praline latte?
No, I'm typically the guy that walks in and goes, oh, hey, they got something new today. That's more of me. I'm more of the, shocked when I walked in and see that it's time for the Christmas drinks. But no, I don't go really crazy over the... I'll get them every now and then.
Cups. That's what people want. What?
That is true. I don't know. That I don't understand.
And it's not even like a collector's
Is
thing.
it an Instagram thing? Like, you got to get it posted on Insta for today?
I'm sure. I mean, it's the social media trend where it's like, oh, look, I got my first Christmas coffee from Starbucks. Look, they got the cups available. Duck face. I don't understand.
Will you please post something like that on your social media?
Yeah, why not? Here's me, and I'm a psychopath.
It was Red Cup Day.
Well, I have
what?
You could have Red Cup Day at home. Just grab a red Solo cup, pour coffee in, and say, let's go.
That was
Red
Thursdays
Cup Day.
in college.
I mean, listen, I am clearly not the target audience for these kinds of promos. So
you're
I
not a
get
big
it,
social
but
media guy.
You're not a big Red Cup guy. When I drive up to a place because I don't like going to get coffee anymore because when I need coffee, I don't want to wait. I just make it at home. It's easier. But when I need it, if I drive up to a spot, which typically is Dunkin' Donuts because it's just amazing, but if there's a line, I just drive past it. I'll keep going until I find a coffee place that I can pull up, pull in, and leave. If I pull up and there's people crowded around waiting for it, I don't care that it's chestnut flavored or Red Cup Day. I'm leaving.
Yeah, I do like some of the drinks that they make, but I'm never paying so close attention that I go, oh, wow, they're just releasing the peppermint mocha. I've definitely got to get in line for it today. I'm truly the guy that goes, man, I feel like I want a coffee. And I typically will get it after work sometimes when I'm coming in.
Sure.
But I'll go in, I'll go, all right, I'm just going to get my normal. I'm just going to get, a Pike's Place to go. And then I see they've got the peppermint mocha, and then I fall for it, and I get it. But I'm not the guy that is I have to, schedule this in my phone. 7 a.m. tomorrow, I'm going to go get a peppermint mocha from Starbucks.
Duck face!
Duck face!
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Hey, there's a pitcher that might be on the move from the New York area. In fact,
Jordan
two of them
Montgomery?
that might be on the move from the New York area.
Well, he was in the New York area.
One of them just won the Cy Young. We'll explain it next here on 101 ESPN.
week can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. Get the info you need before and after every Blues game with the First Community pre- and post-game show, driven by Clement Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Columbia. And catch every Blues home game from the First Community Terrace.
Bring out the Zamboni!
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So you guys ready to trade for Garrett Cole?
Oh, I'm in.
You guys want to do it?
Why would he be available? He's an ace.
According to Paul Himbo, who is a content producer for The Greenie Show up in New York.
So this is like Tanner having hot takes.
He explains today on ESPN New York why the Yankees should trade Garrett Cole this offseason. Now, he went on like a 4-minute rant as to why this makes sense, and none of it made any sense. But
oh, yeah, this is Tanner.
To distill his explanation as plainly as possible, the Yankees are bad, they're old, they need to get young talent, and he's got an opt-out after the season. That's essentially why he thinks that they should trade Garrett Cole, and he believes they should go into a full-blown rebuild. Now, I'd genuinely be shocked if they even considered doing something as asinine and stupid as trading the reigning Cy Young Award winner, who is very clearly at this point in his career the single best pitcher in Major League Baseball. However, if they go brain dead this offseason and Brian Cashman goes full scorched earth and says, I'm going to make my team as bad as humanly possible and get myself fired and trade Garrett Cole, do you think the Cardinals would consider it?
No.
Okay.
Too much money.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's too much money, too many years committed to it.
Too talented.
Yeah.
Hold on, though.
And he's old.
Yeah.
You don't want an old pitcher who's locked up.
What do we think Aaron Nola is going to get this offseason? $30 million?
6 years, 200 and...
Six,
no, 180.
7 by 210 or 6 by 180.
Roughly
probably.
$30 million a year?
Yeah.
Probably.
Garrett Cole's making 36. Garrett Cole is way better than Aaron Nola.
Yeah, but look at how many years he's got committed to him.
I mean, technically just one. He's probably going to opt out of his deal. I actually do agree with that.
Well, then why would you trade for a guy who's going to opt out of his deal? That doesn't make sense for the Cardinals.
You get a year.
Well, what's a year going to do?
I mean, it gives you the best pitcher in baseball for a year.
Oh, really? What's the best pitcher in baseball done for the Yankees?
You could either trade for Garrett Cole or trade for $25 million of Tyler Glasnow.
I would rather have Sonny Gray and Imanaga on my team.
Fair.
With Lugo.
I'd rather shoot my Shota.
Now, he also has a full no-trade clause, by the way, so that also complicates things.
Oh, wow. St. Louis isn't the destination
He could grow his hair back out.
What do you think it would take? Like, if they made him available, do you think it would be just a massive haul in return for the Yankees? I'm assuming the next team would assume that they have a 1 year of control because he's going to opt out of this deal. And I don't think he's going to re-sign before he hits free agency.
Well, yeah, if you're the Yankees, though, you're going to go into this full-blown rebuild. You're getting basically the entire farm system of the team you're trading him to. And I get it, it's 1 year, but somebody who desperately wants him. Remember what Juan Soto, and Soto had 2 years attached to it, but you still had the control that was a part of it. You're going to go more than what the San Diego had to give up to get a Juan Soto, and I mean that was their farm system. Yeah, I mean it's a dude who,
they got 2.5 years of Juan Soto though.
Yeah,
I mean I understand that, but it's 1 year of a Cy Young.
I don't know that it's going to be as significant of a return as we expect.
You know why? Because it's not going to happen.
Well, I'm totally with you.
Yeah,
but like I think the return for guys, and this is why I think it's going to cost less than people are anticipating for Tyler Glasnow. The return for guys on 1 year deals, it's not what it once was. But anyways, we don't have to spend any more time on that because it's not happening and it's just an absolutely insane idea. But I did want to talk about the Cardinals and trades in general because yesterday when we brought up the hypothetical offseason, choose your own adventure of the Cardinals trading for Dylan Cease, which I do think is a real possibility. By the way, the White Sox general manager, Chris Getz, is coming out seemingly every day and talking about how much he hates his baseball team.
No, Eloy Jimenez isn't available now.
You want to try that again?
Eloy Jimenez.
Jimenez, isn't it?
It's the same thing. Jimenez. I pronounced it the exact same. Just shut up.
Fair. He basically is telling everybody who will listen, we want to trade everybody. This team's terrible. We hate all of these players.
Go get Luis Robert, man.
I think he might actually
He might be available. You'd get a both.
I suggested that the Cardinals, not suggested, part of the hypothetical scenario was the Cardinals trade Nolan Gorman and Tinkins for Dylan Cease. Now, that's a lot. I understand that, and I think it's going to cost a lot to get 2 years of Dylan Cease, who's a former Cy Young candidate and is one of the better young pitchers in the sport. So you're going to have to pay a lot because everybody's going to want that guy. Guys, I think part of what's holding Cardinals fans back from committing to a deal like that, from being willing to make a deal like that, is the ghost of trades past. And really the one that immediately comes to mind, I would assume for a lot of fans, is, oh my God, remember what they did for Marcell Ozuna? They traded Sandy Alcantara and Zach Gallen, and both of those guys went on to be Cy Young Award winners elsewhere.
Worth it. We got the clip of the century, him climbing the wall and the ball landing 30 feet in front of him.
That man did the biggest climb for a ball that was nowhere near him.
I will defend the Cardinals until the end of time for making that trade. Now, it could not have gone any worse. Marcell Ozuna wasn't the player that the Cardinals expected him to be. The defense stunk. His arm, he basically didn't have a shoulder. And the offense was just, fine. It was just okay, slightly above average. It was not what the Cardinals were anticipating. And when you add all of that up with the off-field stuff where he just wasn't the guy that they were expecting him to be either, it clearly didn't work here in St. Louis. I think it's fair to say. What if it did, though? What if in a scenario where they made that exact same deal, Marcell Ozuna was 20% above league average offensively. He was hitting 35 home runs and 100 RBIs a year and had an 805 OPS. By the way, that's what Marcell Ozuna has been since the trade, but most of that success has come with Atlanta, unfortunately, for the Cardinals. If that was the guy that the Cardinals traded for and they re-signed him and they kept him here long-term and he was a part of the long-term build here in St. Louis, would we view that trade differently, Alex?
I don't think so, because your pitching would still be in shambles and you're still trying to recreate that. You've got an offense even without Marcell Ozuna, but you've been left to figure out the biggest weakness. If we were talking about them having Jack Flaherty pitching at least an ace, and you've got a couple of other guys who would make it at least compatible, and we're only talking about filling one spot, and Marcell was doing that, then yeah, I think you'd be sitting there saying, who cares what those guys were, because you've gotten this out of Ozuna. But if you would have gotten that out of Ozuna and still been sitting here acting well, they need 3 starting pitchers, that's what you traded away to get a guy that you already have as kind of a strength.
Yeah, I still don't know if it would be viewed as much of a success if he stayed here long-term and had those numbers that you talked about, because, one, I don't know how those numbers would comp to, say, trading a Cy Young winner in Sandy Alcantara and Zach Gallen, who was a stud in the playoffs for the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think it would be viewed as, at best, maybe a wash, but even then, I don't know if it would be, because Cardinals fans would just see Cy Young and go, oh, well, yeah, you clearly lost the trade. You gave up a Cy Young pitcher, and you need the pitchers, to Alex's point, still in this scenario that plays out. So I think there would be less criticism and less of kind of the gun-shy mentality from both the Cardinals front office and from the fan base as a whole if that deal ends up working out and he's here for the long term. But I still think it would come with a lot of kind of cautious tale of, man, you traded away a Cy Young winner and a guy that could potentially win a Cy Young in his future. And I think it would still be viewed as kind of a lost trade, just not as bad of a loss.
That's the hard part. If one of those guys was a guy as a Cy Young candidate and he performed that way, you can understand it. But that's 2 guys that you traded away that could be Cy Young winners.
The reason why I wanted to bring this up today is because I think this is, if Dylan Cease ends up coming here and has success, if he is the guy that the White Sox knew him to be a year ago instead of what he was in 2023, and you trade Nolan Gorman, who goes on to be the player that a lot of Cardinals fans think he's going to be, 35 home runs, 240 hitter, but a lot of power from the left side, and Tinkins ends up going on to be not a number 1 starter, but a really solid number 2 guy, a guy that throws 160 innings a year with a 3.5 ERA. Really nice pitcher that you would love to have in your rotation. I think it's worth it. Because, you got to give something significant to get what you're looking for right now. And the Cardinals are now with pitching where they were at that point with their cleanup hitter. The Cardinals were completely desperate to find somebody that could come in and hit 35 bombs. And they found it, they thought, with Marcell Ozuna. And it failed. It failed spectacularly. But at least they were willing to try, man. My frustration with the Cardinals lately is they aren't even seemingly trying to go get the guy that we all want them to get. And sometimes what it looks like when you try is the Marcell Ozuna trade. And it fails, and it blows up in your face, and you say, man, we messed that one up. But at least we tried. Right now, their biggest issue is last year, they didn't even try to fix their rotation. This year, what a lot of fans are worried about is they're not going to try to fix their rotation again. And so if they end up getting priced out of the top end of the market, what do you got to do? Well, you got to have a plan B. And plan B might be desperation mode, where you go to the White Sox or you go to the Mariners and say, all right, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for us to get Logan Gilbert? What's it going to take for us to get Dylan Cease? And what they're going to tell you is, well, we know you have no other option. Yeah. Your option is either coming to us or sucking with your number one starter again this year.
We choose sucking.
Being in the mode that T-Bone was in with our last segment where we were talking about today's version of Choose Your Own Adventure, where your number one option in your rotation going into the season is Sonny Gray. That's the alternative. And if that's what's presented to them, I think this is the route that they end up going, is saying, we got to do it. We got to bite the bullet and make the trade that we made for Marcell Ozuna, but on the pitching side, and we understand that it could come back to bite us, but it is a move that, like, if we don't make it, the alternative is even worse because our fan base is going to throw it back on our face, justifiably so, the way that you were talking about earlier, T-Bone, and say, we didn't do enough.
Yeah, but
we've got to try to do enough.
They'll spin it as, but then there's envelope number 3 to where we kick the can down the road to one more year and look at the free agent market next year.
And like, it's a very tough spot. So if you go the route and you do make the trade and you bite the bullet and then it does fail, like, it's tough I can't be critical of them because they changed their mindset. The whole John Mozeliak tenure has feel like it has, whether you want to point out the Rosarena trade or the Ozuna trade, has suddenly just become like completely a 180 of how the front office operates ever since that one mistake, to where now it feels like they're like, okay, well, we failed at free agent signings, we failed at this one trade, we got to avoid doing both of those. And now you're operating a baseball team with one hand tied behind your back. But he used to do that. I mean, they lost the sudden passing of Oscar Taveras. What did they do? They did a big swing for Jason Hayward, and they only had him for a year. They weren't even able to lock him up, and then he walks away in free agency to your rival Chicago Cubs. Like, they were willing to make that move. Now they haven't been able to make that move. They haven't been willing to make that move. I will be much more critical of the Cardinals if they decide to go, yeah, sure, we're going to spend these $55 million, but we're going to throw numbers at the problem for our number one, than I am to be like, okay, look, you made the big trade, you made the big swing that we've been calling for, you got Dylan Cease, who I think's got incredible stuff, and it just didn't work out. I'm not going to be as critical of them that way as I would be if they go the route of let's just throw numbers at our number one.
Somebody on the text line said, but guys, you don't give up big-time young hitters who are expected to hit 30 bombs in a season for a pitcher. Maybe not, but you also probably shouldn't give up big-time young hitters who hit 315 with a 30% above league average OPS the year prior, and that's exactly what Minnesota did in order to get Pablo Lopez. You think they regret it? Nope. I don't. Yep. I think they feel great about that trade right now in Minnesota because they have a guy that they can trust. T-Bone called him earlier today, said that's a number one starter for them, even despite the fact, and I think it's a fair thing to say because Pablo Lopez was awesome. Look at what he did in the postseason, man. That is a lot to give up for Pablo Lopez. They give up Luis Ariz, who this year hit 355 for Miami, man.
But once again,
was a Silver Slugger, all-star, led the league in batting average, and it was worth it for them. That is what you have to be willing to do to make these kinds of trades, is give up something that hurts. It hurts a lot. For them, it was Luis Ariz. For the Cardinals, it might end up being Nolan Gorman. And I know everybody wants to put Nolan Arenado in these deals instead of Nolan Gorman. Guess what? He's not accepting a deal to Chicago. He's not accepting a deal to Seattle. He has a no-trade clause. So write it off. It's not happening. I know everybody wants to put Brendan Donovan in these trades. Guess what? These teams aren't going to value him the way that they do Nolan Gorman for the same reason that you don't value him the way that you value Nolan Gorman. You want to put Tommy Edman in there. Guess what? 2 years of control, $11 million already. Like, he ain't going to be the guy either. So here's what you can do. You can either try to go out and get that number one starter via free agency, pay him $30 million a year, or we can talk about the trade route and we can discuss whether or not it's worth it to give up a Nolan Gorman. That's probably what the discussion's going to have to be with John Mozeliak this offseason. I don't know what they're going to do. They might end up saying, screw both of those, we're going Sonny Gray as our number one starter. And then Tanner's going to come on here and crush him. Coming up next, Mizzou basketball gave you reasons for both hope and concern last night. We'll discuss it here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN has your chance to score free tickets to Green Day on August 15th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Green Day will be back this August with special guest Rancid for a huge show at the amphitheater. Get all the ticket details and get entered to win those free tickets for the show right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app.
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
In the backward crossover, 6 seconds to play. Middle of 4 seconds to play. 17-footer for the tie, misses. Rebound off the rim. Mitchell throws it up, missed it. And Missouri comes back from 20 down to win by 2. 70-68 in its first road trip of the season. What a miraculous comeback by Dennis Gates and his Missouri Tigers. The final inside the stunned barn in Minneapolis. Missouri 70, Minnesota 68.
That audio courtesy of the Mizzou Radio Network on Twitter last night. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Alex, Missouri found a way to win last night. And I'm going to focus on the positive for a second because T-Bone has plenty of the negative, and frankly, there's plenty of negative to get to. This win yesterday, being down by 20 with 11 minutes to go, according to ESPN Stats and Info, they had a 99% chance to lose that game with 11 minutes remaining in the second half. For them to be able to come back in a game like that where they were a shell of themselves for 30 minutes, man, I think it speaks highly of what Dennis Gates has brought to this program. I never feel like Mizzou's out of games. This was the case last year. It remains the case this year. And last year, a similar game to this ended up really jump-starting the program. It was the game against UCF where they ended up winning on that heave-ho at the end of the end of the game. I think it was DeAndre Golston who ended up making that one. And from then on, it was like, okay, this team has some kind of sense of invincibility around it. And even when they would get late into games and it was close or they were down, I just always kind of assumed they would find a way to come back and win. Now, obviously, that didn't happen in every game. But for the most part, they were competitive last season, and they found ways to get things done. That's what happened last night against Minnesota. Alex, as you saw the final score, you saw what happened. I know you weren't able to watch. You had a lot of good stuff going on for you in another game that you were watching.
I saw the first half, though, because, I was waiting for puck drop.
What was your impression of that game from Mizzou last night?
I mean, the first half was very concerning because they couldn't hit the barn with their shots.
That was bad.
Meanwhile, Minnesota was dropping everything from three-point range, but everything evened itself out because Minnesota started to go cold and Mizzou started to heat up in the second half. Really, the difference for me in that game was the ability to rebound the ball. Like, Mizzou really struggled in just obtaining rebounds, and some of that's size, some of that's just the way that they were playing in this one. I'm with you, though. Like, as bad as a game as it was, you're not out of games. That's the biggest thing right now, and we saw that last year with Dennis Gates. Now, they had certain guys that you went to, mainly Brown, where you're like, oh, yeah, we could stay in this game because we've got a game changer. I'm not sure you have that right now. But if anything, you've got a head coach who can adjust in a roster that believes in the adjustment and can stay in basketball games. Mizzou is very evidently, though, going to go as far as their shooting percentage from outside the three can take them.
So that's the positive. They won last night. They are now 3-1 on the season. They find a way to steal that one. That's what they did. They stole that one on the road at Minnesota. T-Bone, you are choosing to focus more on the negative side of things from last night.
Of course he is.
Yeah. As probably should be, because that Minnesota team sucks. And Mizzou was down 20 at one point. Look, I'll give them their roses. That's a great game to come back in and survive, essentially. And that's what they were doing, survive in advance to get past that game and get the win in the win category. But, man, I watched that Mizzou team last night, and it feels like it felt clunky offensively. Defensively, it didn't look great. And they weren't a great defensive team last year by any means. But last night was bad early on, where it was the press was being broken super easily, then at least to open three-pointers that Minnesota was making. I don't know. I watched that team last night, and I was like, man, I think this team is going to have some struggles once they get to SEC play. I'm not saying they're not going to be a tournament team. I'm not willing to jump aboard the fully panic bus. But, man, I didn't see anybody that I'm like, man, this guy's a game breaker this year. Kobe Brown was a game breaker last year, to where you put the ball in his hands and say, big fella, go make something happen. And he would do it. I think maybe East can be that guy, but 4 of 12 last night, 2 inconsistent for them. Honor was good with 16 points. And, by the way, I think BK mentioned this. I don't know if you mentioned this in just the group text or you mentioned this on air. They've got to cut down this rotation. They've got to start doing it. Yeah. They ran 13 players out there last night. Minnesota ran 9. It is time to start cutting down this rotation. Figure out who can play and who you like, and then go with it. Because right now it is just too many guys getting too much playing time, and you've got to start cutting that down.
You've got 3 games to do it, because your next 3 games are against Jackson State, South Carolina State, and Loyola, Maryland. So the next 3 games, you'll win by a wide margin. And if you don't, something horrible has happened. These are 3 teams that are ranked in the bottom 50 in the country. Like, they're horrendous basketball teams. After that, you got Pittsburgh, Wichita State, KU, Seton Hall, Illinois, and then you're into the conference play. Like, you got real games coming up. This schedule is not what it was a year ago, where it's a bunch of patty cake games. These are real, legit, either Power 5 opponents that you're going up against, or like the mid-major programs that matter, that could see themselves in March. You have to start cutting this down very soon. And what I find interesting, T-Bone, is they brought in a bunch of dudes via the transfer portal this year that all think they're going to play significant roles for Mizzou. I think some of their young guys look better than the guys that they were able to get via the transfer portal. Last night was Connor Vanover's first game. This is the 7'5" guy that you were talking about, Alex.
Dude's a beast.
He's not, though. He looked really bad in the first half and then didn't play a single minute in the second half. It was his first game back after the 3-game suspension, so maybe things will get better for him.
Okay, let me rephrase. He looks like a beast.
Caleb Brown's a good story, man. His brother was such a great player for Mizzou. He can't play. He should not see the court for Mizzou anymore this year. And frankly, he should probably transfer, but if he's going to just have a scholarship there because his brother was great, fine. No problem. It is what it is. But you've got to start deciding, okay, who are we building around for this year? I love what I've seen so far this season from some of the young guys, most notably a guy like Kurt Lewis, who we saw last night. Jordan Butler has looked really good. I have loved what we've seen from Ant Robinson, freshman point guard that they've got, defends like crazy. I think he's going to be a pretty good offensive player, too. Build around them. Tamar Bates should get more minutes than what he's getting so far. He's been great this year early on. Those are the guys that I would like to see a little bit more of, and then cut some of the minutes for some of these other guys. Instead of going with a 13-man rotation, get it down to like 9 right now. Yeah. You'll eventually get it down to like 7 probably. Right now, if you're at 9 or 10, that's probably where you want to be.
And I'm not going to crush them for this, because a lot of teams are still trying to figure out their identity, but they don't look like they know what each guy should be and is capable of doing right now. Like, who's the guy that's the slasher that's going to get into the paint? I think that's East, but I'm not 100% certain of that. Who's going to be the guy that's going to be kind of that spot-up three-point shooter that, hey, we need a bucket from deep?
Supposed
who's
to be
that
Caleb
guy?
Grill, but he hasn't been making his threes so far.
Exactly. Like, and again, it is early. Like, I'm not going to hit like the absolute panic button, but there are some concerning trends with this team that make me go, okay, I don't know if they're as good as they were last year. And that might be expected because you did lose Kobe Brown.
And by the end of, basically mid-December, before we get to that bragging rights game, we're going to know who this Mizzou team is. We're going to have a pretty good idea. Pittsburgh, Wichita State, Kansas, Seton Hall. Those 4 games will give you a pretty clear indicator of just how far you are away from being any kind of legitimate contender. The Kansas game, it's KU, so maybe because it's the border war, we'll see something closer than what I'm currently expecting. KU's amazing, dude. That team is really freaking good. They just did really well against Kentucky, so I'm not expecting a ton in that one. But if you wanted to take the positive from last night's game, it was them showing the fight. If you want to take the negative, it's almost everything else. All right, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on 101 ESPN.
Want to say something? Then say it. Use the mic drop feature in the 101 ESPN app. Search the 101 ESPN app now in the App Store or Google Play. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Schrader leads the Tigers into senior night. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Brunts with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Fresh off of a record-breaking performance in last weekend's win over Tennessee, Mizzou's Cody Schrader figures to once again be a major part of the attack tomorrow. Florida arrives in Columbia for MU's regular season home finale. Beforehand, though, the star running back swung by the opening drive to reflect on that unforgettable outing against the Vols.
Yeah, it was definitely surreal. Just having the brotherhood and the friendships that I've made since I've been here, and just seeing that moment and everybody kind of lifting me up and, cheering me on and stuff like that was just definitely an incredible, special moment.
Schrader compiled more than 300 total yards from scrimmage. Then, Saturday evening, Missouri and the Gators grapple starting at 6:30. 3 hours later, the Blues embrace another West Coast challenge. Los Angeles will provide the opposition after San Jose's 5-1 drubbing. Of the note, this SportsCenter update was brought to you by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at Londoff Autoplex or LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. This is BK and Ferrario. Time now for One's Gotta Go. We offer up the talking points, and you get to pick which one's gotta go on 101 ESPN.
Count that big pen.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one has got to go here on 101 ESPN. Let's start out with this. One's got to go pepperoni, Italian sausage, bacon, or beef. Pizza toppings edition. Alex, pepperoni, Italian sausage, bacon, or beef. Which one's got to go?
This is easy. Beef. Put beef on their pizza.
I'm with you.
You're gonna get the oil with it. It makes the pizza nastier, which
hamburger
means,
style.
Yeah, no, I'm out on that one.
If you're gonna go T-bone pizza,
if you're gonna go hamburger, just go Italian sausage.
Exactly.
Pepperoni's the goat of all of these, though.
Yeah, I would get rid of hamburger for sure.
It's a meatball.
Doesn't matter.
I'm out.
Meatball.
Yeah,
Who put a meatball on it?
Yeah.
You're a meatball.
On a pizza?
Italian sausage. Don't put meatball on a pizza.
You can put meatball on there, though.
No.
It's
Italian sausage.
Dewey's has one that's really good.
Italian sausage. You don't put meatballs on pizza.
I'm with them. Get rid of the hamburger. I love pepperoni, sausage, bacon pizza. I don't need the hamburger there. I don't mind like a hamburger green pepper pizza. That's a big go-to in the Hendrickson family, but I would much rather have the sausage, pepperoni, and bacon.
What are we doing with bacon? You guys are putting bacon on your pizza?
Oh, yeah. But see, here's the thing. You can't put the strip of bacon on pizza. It's got to be the crumble bacon on pizza.
Why?
That's true.
What do you mean, why?
What are you eating bacon with?
Pizza.
With sausage and pepperoni.
What else are you putting on there?
All meat,
Oh,
baby.
no. What I do is I do bacon and onion.
Ew.
Bacon and onion, or bacon and green pepper is another really good one,
on there?
too. No, you don't put jalapeno on the damn thing either.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Gotta Go. One's Gotta Go Fall Chores Edition.
All of them.
Raking leaves. Cleaning out the gutter. Putting up Christmas decorations. Or airing up your tires.
That one's not
That's
hard
a
at all.
fall chore?
Yeah, when the weather gets cold.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be a winter thing?
Man, it happened recently. I had to go pump up my tires.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my wife's tires. I had to do both.
Oh, well, look at you being chivalrous. Congrats, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
This one's easy.
Figured out how to do it and everything.
It's raking leaves. I just had to do this
the worst
in my backyard. And so there's too many of them, and I know you live this life too, BK. There's way too many of them to bag or mulch. So what I do is I just leaf blow them all the way to the back of my yard, and then I say in the springtime, I'll take care of them and just rake them over the fence.
Yeah,
I've decided this year I'm waiting until all the leaves are down. I said,
that'll never happen.
No, yeah, that's the way you're supposed to do it.
I'm not doing it. Last year, I made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, you can't do it every week.
I did it at the beginning of the season when my leaves fell, because my trees are the first ones to drop all their leaves. So I was like, okay, I'm good. Decided to rake up all of the leaves. My lawn looked immaculate. Green Envy came out. They made sure to make it all look good as well. We got all the seed in for the early seeding. We're good, right? And then, boom, next day, like literally the next day, I might as well have not even raked any leaves because they're blowing over from my neighbor's yard. So, yeah, I'm waiting. I'm not doing it until we get further into the winter, honestly. Yeah. But the leaves are absolutely the worst.
What was the other one? There was tires, Christmas,
cleaning
leaves.
out gutters. You probably never done that.
Gutters suck because you got to get the ladder and move it around, but gutters take like 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's definitely the least. I hated when my mom would always be like, you know what we're going to do today? And I went, well, we're going to watch college football. No, we're going to go rake leaves. No thanks.
I did the leaf blower, and I just blew it all to the back of the yard.
Christmas one's fun, dude. I'm putting my stuff up this weekend.
No, I've been pushing that one as much as possible.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. One's got to go. The NHL, MLB, NFL, or NBA?
NBA.
This stupid in-season tournament that they've been talking about, that has like turned me off of the NBA more than anything. Give me NBA finals, and that's it.
Yeah, I would definitely say NBA. I love the playoffs because the playoffs are actually playing defense. They're not doing that at all in the regular season. They don't play defense in the regular season. They've got the stupid in-season tournament, and they let everybody in the playoffs. Truly, everybody.
That's where I'm out on. That's why I don't even like the playoffs. Like, give me the championship game.
It's the play-in game. The 9 seed who's 5 games below 500, and the 10 seed who's 12 games below 500 that their fan base doesn't even care about.
Just stupid.
Guys, I'm sad.
Why?
It's the NBA because professionally it's bad for me to say anything else.
Well, not NFL, man.
Yeah, the city hates that.
Yeah. I'm about to say get rid of the NFL. Joe Burrow's out for the rest of the year. Breaking news from the Cincinnati Bengals. They tweeted it out. Joe Burrow's out for the remainder of the season.
If you don't like it, stay healthy.
He's getting surgery on his wrist. This sucks, man. Torn ligament. It's going to require surgery. Jake Browning is the new starting quarterback in Cincinnati.
Maybe the Bengals can be bad for the rest of the season and actually draft an offensive lineman to protect their quarterback.
I didn't even think about this. Where are they at right now? You can take that bed down back in the studio, Bradford. We're going to have to stick on this for a minute. Where are the Bengals at right now in the draft order? They are currently selecting
5 and 6, right?
They're 5 and 5 on the season. They're currently selecting 18th
so
as
they're
of
probably
today.
middle of the pack.
They'll get to top 10 by the end of the season, and they'll probably draft a wide receiver.
They are a game and a half behind the Green Bay Packers, who are currently selecting 6th. Yeah, they're going to end up with Marvin Harrison Jr., aren't they?
Yeah.
Ooh, that would be fun, though.
That's a terrible decision. How about you draft an offensive lineman?
This stupid team is going to end up picking in the top 10, and they're going to get, like, the next coming of one of the best receivers in the NFL, and they're going to let T. Higgins walk or trade him, and they're going to end up with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jamar Chase as their weapons.
And do the same thing they did with Jamar Chase. Make the wrong decision, should have drafted an offensive lineman.
Yeah, clearly that's gone poorly.
You complain about him being injured all the time. Well, maybe if you gave him a good offensive line, he wouldn't be.
True.
Sucks, man.
Yeah, so we can write off the Bengals.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that you're really upset because your stupid bet that we told you wasn't going to work? Yeah, you did.
Did I do this?
Dude, I told you that the bet was stupid in the first place.
We both did.
And it wasn't even anything to do with the Bengals.
And he tried to convince us. He's like, oh, no, it's really going to work, man. Rodgers is going to come back. The Jets will say in this.
It was a fake Achilles injury, and he was going to come back by the end of the year. So I have the Bengals.
God, I hope the Jets actually win that division now.
That's going to be
just so Cincinnati loses.
I'm going to be actively rooting against them. So I have the Bengals and the Jets parlayed to win their respective divisions. I did this two weeks ago prior to the Bengals game against the 49ers at 85-1 odds to be able to win their respective divisions. And obviously that bet could not be more dead now. God, who benefits the most from this in the AFC? Because I think the Bengals were going to make the playoffs. If Joe Burrow was healthy, I think they were still going to get in, despite the fact that at 5 and 5 right now, they're on the outside looking in. I think they would have eventually got in there.
I mean, is it the Browns or Steelers to be able to get one of those wild card spots now?
I mean, Deshaun Watson's out, right?
Wow.
For the rest of the year, too?
Yeah.
But again,
do you think Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to get them to the playoffs?
No, but I think their defense could get them to the playoffs.
I'm
saying the same thing about Pittsburgh. I don't think Kenny Pickett could get them to the playoffs. I think their defense gets them to the playoffs.
I mean, there's 3.
Houston's going to get in now.
Yeah,
I think Houston's winning the AFC South.
They were one of my 3 teams that I think could potentially benefit from this. One, Houston, because now you don't have Cincinnati potentially coming up the rear there and trying to take that last playoff spot. But I think Cleveland and Pittsburgh are going to fall out of this, but I think it's probably Buffalo and the Chargers. They're probably the two teams that are going to benefit from this most,
honestly,
because they don't have to chase down the Bengals, because I think the Bengals would have taken one of those spots. Maybe Houston ends up staying in there. Then there's one spot between the Bills and the Chargers still left for the playoffs.
And honestly, if Aaron Rodgers comes back fast enough, I guess this does leave the opening for the Jets to get into it.
Have you seen the Bills' remaining schedule, though?
I know it's pretty tough.
So they've got the Jets this week, which they should win that game. They're a touchdown favorite.
Oh,
but
no, they've lost already.
At Philadelphia, at Kansas City, home against Dallas, at the Chargers, at the Dolphins. Good luck, man. I don't know that they're going to be able to make the playoffs. If they had the first half of their schedule in the second half, like the same quality of opponents, I would totally be with you, T-Bone. But I don't know that they're going to be able to overcome that. I like your call of the Chargers. Green Bay, New England, Denver, Vegas, Denver again. I could see the Chargers ending up in the postseason.
Another team that I didn't even think of, Colts could sneak their way in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're a team that would do anything in the playoffs once they get there, but Gardner Minshew's better than Dorian Thompson, quarterback in Cleveland, and honestly, Kenny Pickett at this point.
Can I say the other team that, like, you grit your teeth and maybe you could see how they'd get in?
Don't say the Raiders.
The Broncos. I know. I know. Dude, somebody bad is going to get into the playoffs.
According to Zach Taylor, the season's far from over.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. No, they're
another example of why expanding playoffs sucks. Right here. We're looking at it right now. Right now we're looking at it. If this was 6 teams, man, we'd be fine. We wouldn't even be talking about the stupid Broncos.
If Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers weren't out for the season, we also wouldn't be having this conversation. If Anthony Richardson was still playing, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If Jimmy G was in it wouldn't.
He is healthy.
Yeah, he is healthy and not helping that team.
The Broncos are a team that could absolutely end up making the postseason. Minnesota, Cleveland, Houston, Detroit, New England, the Raiders.
Leaves a sour taste in my mouth.
They've won 3 in a row. They've won 4 of their last 6. They played a tight game against the Chiefs. I know they gave up 70 points against Miami earlier this year, but they're technically trending in the right direction. So.
Yeah, well, BK's right. The Chiefs probably are the best team in the AFC now.
They are. It's by a process of elimination. It's not even about me saying the Chiefs are this excellent team. They're worse than they were last year.
But nobody in the AFC is winning the Super Bowl. It'll be an NFC team this year.
This conference stinks.
It does.
All right, coming up
Draft
next.
an offensive lineman to protect your quarterback for once.
We're going to look ahead to this weekend in the NFL, which is full of, I'm sure, great football games here on 101 ESPN.
Run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
All right, let's go through our NFL weekend look ahead. If you missed the news from the last segment, unfortunately, Joe Burrow is going to be out for the rest of the season. You can go ahead and stick a fork in the Bengals. They're done for the year.
Go Bengals!
It is over for them. But there are other weekend matchups to look forward to. There's at least 3 starting quarterbacks that remain around the league that aren't injured, so we can talk about them here. Alex, if you could sit in front of your television on Sunday and watch one game and only one game, what's the matchup you're most looking forward to?
Oh, God. Can I say none of them? It's Sunday, right? We're not picking the Monday Night Football game?
Yeah, we'll talk about the Monday night game.
I was going to say, that's in its own entity. Honestly, it's probably Cardinals-Texans.
Is it insane that that is also the one that I would say?
Mostly because I just want to see all of the offense.
I think it's going to be a really fun game.
I do, too.
I don't think it's going to be like a lot of great defense by any stretch, but Kyler looked good last week, and I think this Cardinals team is spunky. I don't think they're good, but they're spunky.
Spunky? There's a word.
The Texans, I think, are legitimately a fun team. So,
well, they've just become a playoff team now because of Cincinnati news. So, yeah, that's mine.
I think that's the most entertaining matchup that we've got available to us on Sunday, which basically means, hey,
don't watch any of the games.
Go do the leaves.
Go rake your leaves.
Hey, honey, I am willing this Sunday to take a day away from football. Why don't we go take the kids? We can go to a park. We can go to the zoo. We'll go. You know what? You've been saying you want to go to the zoo lights. Let's go do that now.
That's in the evening, man.
Yeah, well, you can do that during the evening and the day. Go
You'll
enjoy
look like
your
an
family.
idiot if you try to do it in the
Earn
day.
yourself some brownie points. This is the Sunday to do it. T-Bone, what's your matchup?
The game for me, and I guess the Cardinals one's fine, but I just have no interest in watching the Cardinals.
Oh, he's going to say Seahawks, Rams.
I am.
Jesus.
Stafford's back, so I think, you're going to get a decent matchup. The Rams' offense is fine when Stafford's playing.
Carson Wentz has been doing the pregame scouting for the Rams with Geno Smith.
Yeah, and I also have a parlay with the Seahawks winning their division. One that was actually reasonable, not taking the Jets in the AFC East.
Well, if we're going that stupid thing, then I'll take the Bears-Lions because I got a bet on them.
I think the Rams are going to win that one straight up.
Well, if they are, the Seahawks are.
I hope not.
The Seahawks are terrible if they do lose that game.
Speaking of which, what's the upset pick that you're looking at this week? The Rams actually don't qualify. They are only a 1-point underdog at home. We got to go 3 points or above. If you had to pick one team that is a 3-point or greater underdog this weekend that will pull off this straight-up upset, Alex, who are you going with?
I'm going to take the Titans. Don't know why. I think probably because Trevor Lawrence got a knee issue, they're saying. I just think he's bad. But I know Will Levis is bad also. But if I'm going to take one, I would go the Titans finding the upset over Jacksonville because it's on the road.
That's a good one.
Derrick Henry traditionally has torn apart the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Well, and now that they're throwing the ball, DeAndre Hopkins has been a weapon, and Jacksonville's not been anything good defensively.
I know I just ripped on the Cardinals, but they're probably the second best one here, I would think, because I do kind of like that Titans one. I could see where they could do that. I probably would say the Cardinals because Houston, though, I think they are probably a playoff team. They're a playoff team with 9 or 10 wins. And what does that mean? You're going to get some of those inconsistent games from them like you saw when they lost to the Carolina Panthers. I could see where they kind of overlook the Cardinals, lay an egg, and lose at home to Arizona.
If I was going to go something different, because my pick is also Arizona, that would be the one that I would pick to win straight up. I really wanted to go with the Jets on this one because their defense always gives the Bills trouble. They always seem to find a way to make life miserable for Josh Allen. But Garrett Wilson is apparently potentially not going to play in this one. If you don't have Garrett Wilson, I don't know how that team scores. They can't throw the football if he's not going to be available to them. So I'll go with something a little different. I'll say the Packers at home against the Chargers. Potentially a cold game in Green Bay. Potential rain there as well. I don't think the Packers are particularly good, but at home, weird stuff happens with the Chargers. I'll go ahead and say that's the other upset that you could potentially see. Alex, who's the team that has the most to gain with a win this weekend in your mind?
I think it's the Texans because they can now capitalize. Like if the Jaguars, for some reason, lay an egg, they can capitalize. The other one that has a lot to gain, to me, would be the Bills. And I don't think it's anything to do because of the Bills. I think it has everything to do with the Cincinnati Bengals news.
Sure.
And we're asking about teams that could legitimately be a playoff team now. It's Buffalo. And the up-and-down season that they've had, the inconsistent Josh Allen, now you've got a wide-open opportunity for you to jump back into the postseason race.
T-Bone, we got to go quick. Who's yours?
I think it's whoever ends up winning this Steelers-Browns game.
That's what I would
You're going to be in a perfect spot. You've got 7 wins on the year with 6 to go. Yeah, you're in the fight still in the playoffs.
I'll go Steelers. Their remaining schedule after this weekend when they take on the Dorian Thompson-Robinson-led Cleveland Browns. The Bengals without Joe Burrow. Arizona, New England, Indianapolis, Cincinnati again without Joe Burrow. Seattle and Baltimore. I think this team might end up winning like 12 games this year, which is ridiculous. I don't think they're particularly good, but that's where we're at with this year's NFL season. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Bradford Bruns did a great job for us back in the studio today. We've been broadcasting at the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. 2 Blues games, a bunch of football as well, some basketball, a lot to do. We'll talk to you guys on Monday at 11 a.m. here on 101 ESPN.